Chapter 45-44. Senior, don't joke around. I'm not stupid. Linny couldn't help but smile bitterly. Curiosity not only killed the cat, but it also killed people. Since ancient times, many top experts had died because of curiosity. Since you're not stupid, why don't you hurry up and start practicing? This place is blessed by the heavens, and it's simply the best place for you to practice. If you don't seize the time to practice now, it'll be a waste of the opportunity that the heavens have given you. The ghostly thing said with envy. Huh, what do you mean? Linny was slightly stunned. Although he still didn't understand, he faintly felt that this might be an excellent opportunity. An opportunity that could make the ghostly thing, the former Azure Dragon, jealous was definitely something that could only be encountered by chance. This is the 5 Poison Swamp, and you happen to be a person with 5 spiritual roots. Maybe you're the only one in the world. What do you mean? The ghostly thing asked. Hearing the ghostly thing's reminder, Linny had a flash of inspiration and grasped the key point. He became excited, but he still said with some uncertainty, "But isn't this the mutual destruction of the 5 elements? These 5 elements' murderous auras at most won't attack me, so how can I use them to practice?" For others, the mutual destruction of the 5 elements is absolutely fatal, but for a gifted freak like you, the 5 elements' murderous auras are very useful. It's not as simple as not attacking you. The ghostly thing paused and couldn't help but sigh in its heart. To be honest, it's extremely rare to have 5 spiritual roots at the same time on the heavenly island. I've lived for so long, but I've never heard of a human cultivator with 5 spiritual roots other than spirit beasts. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's unique. Oh? Linny slightly raised his eyebrows. He had long known that he had 5 spiritual roots and 7 attributes, but he didn't think that there was anything special about it. At most, he had more spiritual roots, and at most, he could choose a wider range of cultivation methods and martial skills. It was impossible for him to make full use of every spiritual root, even when he participated in the Morning Star Academy selection. After knowing the advantages of having a multi-elemental spiritual root, he didn't think that his spiritual root of the 5 elements and 7 elements would be so rare and unique. Even those 5 elements mediums that open the heavenly island are just pawns in the end. In the end, they won't be able to hold on and will be destroyed. You're the only exception. At this point, the ghostly thing's voice couldn't help but sigh. Your inheritor girlfriends, in order to prevent you from being hurt, each and every one of them risked their lives to protect you. They would rather die themselves to bear the pain for you. This kind of love is really touching. You were able to successfully enter the island in the end because they fought for you. As the former Azure Dragon, the values of this ghostly thing could be said to be very different from those of human cultivators. In particular, he had always scoffed and disdained human relationships. However, this time, the actions of Lin Yi's inheritor's girlfriends had truly moved him for the first time. He had never known that the love between a man and a woman could be so selfless and great. It was truly inconceivable. This kind of thing would never happen with spiritual beasts. Perhaps this was the biggest difference between humans and spiritual beasts. Yeah, I wonder how they are now. The ghostly thing couldn't help but sigh. At the same time, Lin Yi's thoughts were also drawn to the common world. It had been more than a year and a half since he had landed on Heavenly Island. If it was possible, he would fly back to the common world right now. He wanted to see how his girlfriends were doing with his own eyes. If it wasn't for that, he wouldn't have spent a huge sum of money to get the Central Chamber of Commerce to send a letter at the Zhongdao auction house without hesitation. He didn't know if his letter had reached the common world, and he didn't know if he would receive a reply. Heavenly Island and the common world were 2 different worlds. There was no way he could get a reply. In the past year and a half, although Lin Yi's strength had increased by at least 100 times, he was still far from achieving his most important goal. He didn't even get to see Zhang Liju, let alone find a way to save his girlfriends. This was a result that made Lin Yi very depressed. However, it wasn't as if there was no progress at all. At least, Lin Yi had established a deep relationship with the 2 disciples, Kai Zhongyang and Hou Guanqi. This meant that he had opened up a path to meet Zhang Liju in the future. All he needed to do was wait for the right opportunity. Other than that, Lin Yi also received another piece of exciting news. It was the information that the Central Merchant Group revealed. All the signs pointed to the same thing. There was a possibility that there was a two-way path between Heavenly Island and the common world. Those goods were the best proof. These two things were very important to Lin Yi. Zhang Liju meant that he could save people, and a two-way path meant that he could go back to the common world. As long as he was strong enough and had both, then all problems could be solved. Although it wasn't as easy as it sounded, at least Lin Yi wasn't as lost as he was at the beginning. As long as he could find the direction, with his incredible potential, everything would come true one day. Lin Yi couldn't help but fall into deep thought. The ghost's voice rang in his head, its tone a little complicated. Don't think about useless things like that. There is indeed a two-way path between Heavenly Island and the common world. I can tell you this very clearly, and that Zhang Liju that you're looking for, I actually know him too. What? You know him too, Senior? Then why haven't I heard you mention him after so long? Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised. Looking for Zhang Liju was his most important mission on Heavenly Island. Compared to this, everything else was like floating clouds. It was a pity that Miracle Dr. Dan St. Zhang Liju was a legendary figure. Even though he had stayed in Middle Island for so long and had such a close relationship with Kai Zhongyang and the others, he still didn't get the chance to meet him. It could only be said that the time wasn't right yet. Lin Yi didn't expect that the ghost that stayed in his jade space all day and night actually knew Zhang Liju, but after so long, it didn't even mention a word about him. How secretive. Say my ass. The ghostly thing snorted and paused for a long time before explaining in a faint tone. I had a fight with that old bastard, and we've already gotten into a conflict. I can't be bothered to talk about this with you, brat. To be continued. Chapter 45-45. Had a fight? What do you mean? Lin Yi's interest was piqued. So this thing had fought with Zhang Liju. One of them was the former Green Dragon Elder. The other was the Saint Dan Doctor. Both of them were top-notch existences in the whole of Sky Division. The battle between the two of them would definitely be exciting, but from the tone of the ghost, it didn't seem to have gotten anything out of Zhang Liju, otherwise, it wouldn't have been so quiet. This wasn't surprising at all. Even if this thing was a top-notch master of the Spirit Beast clan, Zhang Liju was still very famous. Even if Zhang Liju was famous for his elixir refinement and medical skills, he wasn't weak at all. In the entire 5 islands of Sky Class, there were only a handful of people who could take him down with ease, perhaps even uncountable. Lin Yi wasn't a gossipy person, but this was related to the battle between the ghost and Zhang Liju, and his curiosity was ignited. Humph, it's nothing, we just fought once. The ghost humphed. It didn't want to say much, but seeing how excited Lin Yi was, it finally said, back then, that old bastard Zhang Liju found a way to go to the common world, but he needed the help of all 7 of his wives to open the path. Wait, 7? How could there be 7? Didn't he only have 2 wives? Lin Yi froze. Zhang Liju's 2 wives were Master Shui and Master Ice. This was something everyone knew. Even when he came to Sky Division Island, the locals said the same thing. Why were there so many? Hee, even a disciple like you, who you've never met before, has so many girlfriends. How could that old bastard only have 2? The ghost laughed weirdly and said with envy, to be honest, that old bastard's luck is off the charts. He only had 2 wives before he came to Sky Division Island. In the end, he had all kinds of luck with women and found 5 wives in a row. What was even more amazing was that all 7 of his wives had spiritual roots of the 5 elements and 7 attributes. What kind of luck do you think this is? As a spiritual beast, this ghost wasn't interested in how many wives a human could have, but Zhang Liju's 7 wives were all of the 5 elements and 7 elements. This was something to be envious of. After all, this was something that could be put to good use. Lin Yi couldn't help but be speechless as he listened to the ghostly thing's strange laughter. These 7 wives of Zhang Liju's really made one speechless. This cheap Sherfu that he'd never met before couldn't have found them based on the 5 elements and 7 elements, right? Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? But when he thought about himself, forget it. It was better not to talk about others behind their backs. Could it be that he is also a 5 elements cultivator? Otherwise, even if his 7 wives gathered the 5 elements and 7 attributes, without a medium, they wouldn't be able to open the formation channel, right? In order to get him to help, I tried so hard to convince him to think for the sake of the spirit beasts. As long as he's willing to open the channel, the spirit beasts will always remember his kindness. We'll pay any price for it. And he still didn't agree? Lenny was speechless. With this ghostly thing's identity as the Green Dragon Elder, making a promise like this was basically the same as getting the entire Spirit Beast clan's approval and support. The Spirit Beasts were a force far above the human sections. This was a benefit that no big boss would reject. Even someone at Zhang Liju's level wouldn't be able to ignore it. Chapter 45-46. What the hell? Why am I involved in this all of a sudden? Lenny was speechless as he smiled bitterly. Did he help you after that? I think so. Or else how did you get to the common world? The ghost went silent for a while and said faintly, I guess he helped me half. At half? What's that supposed to mean? Lenny paused. Nothing much. I just kept bugging him, and that old thing got annoyed by my nagging, so he agreed to fight with me. If I won, he'd help me, but if I lost, then there's nothing left to talk about, and I'd never bother him again, the ghost explained. And then? What happened? Lin Yi asked impatiently. He really wanted to know who was stronger between the ghost and Zhang Liju. These two peak existences, we fought for 3 days and nights, from the sky to the ground to the sea, and in the process, we even destroyed 5 small islands, and neither of us won. It was a draw. The ghost's tone was a little excited as it talked about this. After all, an opponent like Zhang Liju, who was almost undefeatable, was hard to find in this world. Ugh, that was really intense. Lenny couldn't help but be speechless. From what he knew, the stronger the practitioner, the more they would focus on killing in one hit, especially at the level of this ghost and Zhang Liju. Normally, they would be able to decide who was stronger in one move, but the two fought for 3 days and 3 nights without a clear winner. It was obvious that they were on par with each other. It was indeed intense. Other than Zhang Liju, I've never met an opponent like this before. Even Vermilion Bird wasn't this difficult to deal with, and it was a piece of cake. I have to say, that old thing is really something. The ghost nodded and sighed. As the previous Green Dragon, he had always been proud and arrogant, and other than the Spirit Beast King, he rarely respected anyone like this. Zhang Liju was a rare exception. What happened after that? Lenny continued. After that, no one lost, and no one won. The previous bet can't be counted. Since we fought to a draw, I can only help half of it. That old thing didn't help me open the formation passage, but he lent me the 5 elements divine stone, so I can go to the secular world. However, the price I have to pay is that I've been tortured by that huge pressure. I've ended up like this, the ghostly thing said in a self-deprecating manner. I see. Lenny nodded. He already knew what happened next, so there was no need to continue asking. But after some thought, he asked, wait, if Zhang Liju didn't open the portal because he didn't want his 7 wives to get hurt, then why did he go to the common world? The reason why he asked this was because Lin Yi suddenly remembered that the cauldron in the tomb had disappeared for some reason. If he was right, it should be Zhang Liju's doing. This meant that he had been to the common world at least once. Could it be that he ran into some emergency that he couldn't even care about his 7 wives? With the protective nature that the ghost described, that didn't seem possible, right? He did tell me. Since it was a tie, he could help me open the formation channel after a while. However, the prerequisite was that he had to wait until his wives' strength had increased to the same realm. Only then would he be able to open the formation channel. At most, they'll just use up some pure chi, and they won't all get hurt or fall unconscious. They'll recover after a few years of rest, so there's no need to take any risks. The ghost said, so that's what you mean. His wives have all fulfilled the requirements, and that's why he can go back and forth between the common world and Sky-class Island. Lenny nodded. Isn't that a good suggestion? We just need to wait for a few years, and we won't have to take any risks. Senior, could it be that you can't even wait for a few years? Although the lifespan of a high-level cultivator, especially a top-notch spiritual beast like the ghost, was not endless, it was still extremely long. A few years was just a blink of an eye, and it could be gone by casually in closed-door cultivation. Why would it take such a huge risk to fight for a few years and end up like this? No matter how one looked at it, it was not worth it. Of course not. The ghostly being's voice was scorching. Then it smiled bitterly. If it wasn't for the fact that the Spirit Beast clan situation was already in dire straits, based on my personality, why would I lower my pride and ask a human for help? Even when I was facing the Spirit Beast King, I've never been so submissive. If I had waited a few more years, I wouldn't have had any problems. But the Spirit Beast clan has already fallen apart. You've seen how ambitious the Vermilion Bird is, so how could I possibly wait? That's true, but haste makes waste. From what I see, if you hadn't been so impulsive back then and listened to Zhang Liju and waited a few more years, things wouldn't have gotten out of hand like this. At least, with you and the Spirit Beast clan, even if Vermilion Bird got a puppet to become the new Spirit Beast King, it wouldn't be able to do whatever it wants like this. Lin Yi analyzed. Before the situation was clear, it was better to stay put than to take action. This was his experience over the years. However, everyone had a different personality, so naturally, their style of doing things was also different. If the ghost did as he said, then it wouldn't be a ghost. That's true. It's too bad that I didn't meet you back then, kid, or I wouldn't be where I am today. To be honest, you may not be strong, but there are many things that I can learn from you. The ghost sighed. This wasn't just being courteous, it was the truth. Lin Yi was able to grow at such a shocking speed in just a few years, and it wasn't just because of his talent and luck, but also because of his style of doing things. If it were anyone else, even if they had the same talent and luck, they would have been killed a long time ago. Chapter 45-47. The ghost was actually a little embarrassed, and after a long pause, he said weakly, "It's just that this experience is a little embarrassing. What's there to announce? Besides, we weren't that close back then. I didn't have the nerve to tell you about this. My God, if you had told me about this earlier, I wouldn't have had to live in fear for so long." Lin Yi held his forehead, speechless. He had been living in fear for the past 1.5 years, not because of the pressure from his enemies, but because he had been worrying about Zhang Liju. What if Zhang Liju didn't have the confidence to save his women? Or, what if Zhang Liju had the confidence to save them, but couldn't go back to the common world? With Lin Yi's personality, he wouldn't get angry no matter how strong the enemy was, just like how he was facing Shishan Elder right now. At most, he would find a place to hide, and when he was strong enough, he would come back to settle the score. It wasn't a big deal. But the two things he was worried about couldn't be solved with just hard work and practice. Whether or not he could succeed depended on Zhang Liju, and Lin Yi himself couldn't help at all. This feeling of helplessness was the most torturous thing. For the past 1.5 years, Lin Yi couldn't help but worry whenever he closed his eyes, afraid that he would get a negative answer. If it weren't for his strong mental fortitude, any other person would have been tortured to the point of having a nervous breakdown. But at the very least, these two questions were answered by this damn thing, and they were both positive answers as well. It was a cause for celebration, and Lin Yi's heart could finally be at ease. Although Zhang Liju said that he didn't have the confidence to save the inheritor, as the ghost said, he had never failed before, so one could see that he was very confident. As long as there were no accidents, it shouldn't be a problem for him to save the inheritor. Other than that, Lin Yi didn't have to worry about not being able to go back to the common world. Even if he couldn't get a conclusion from the Central Chamber of Commerce in the future, as long as he could find Zhang Liju, there would definitely be a way to open the portal to the common world. This news was like a reassuring pill for Lin Yi. However, after knowing these two pieces of news, Lin Yi wasn't in a rush anymore. Zhang Liju had opened it once 2 years ago, and according to the ghost, his 7 wives needed to rest for a few years before they could recover. He wouldn't be able to open it again in the near future, so there was no point for Lin Yi to worry now. He might as well focus on accumulating his strength. Of course, if there was a chance in the future to explore the secret passageway of the Central Chamber of Commerce, that would be a pleasant surprise as well. However, with Zhang Liju as a reliable option, Lin Yi didn't have to be too insistent on it. He didn't have to worry about it. After all, the Central Chamber of Commerce was full of masters, and it wasn't a place to be messed with. Now that both of his worries had been resolved, Lin Yi's spirit was lifted. There was an obvious change in his spirit compared to before, and although he was still as calm and reserved as before, there was now a sunny aura around him that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. You can't blame me for this. I'm not a gossiper. Why would I keep this kind of embarrassing thing on my lips all day long? You're lucky that you're able to hear it now. I was planning to keep this to myself and never tell anyone else. Now that I've made an exception for you, what's there to be dissatisfied about? The ghost laughed coldly. At the same time, the ghost couldn't help but feel a little emotional. When he was in the common world, he didn't have much interaction with Lin Yi, let alone a close relationship. So when they first came to Skyclass Island, the only thing he did to protect Lin Yi was to keep him alive. Other than that, he didn't care about anything else. But in the past year or so, the two of them had been through thick and thin together, and Lin Yi's temperament was to his liking. Their relationship was completely different from before, and the things he wouldn't say or do in the past weren't strange at all. In fact, he felt that it was only natural for him to do so now. All right, then I'm really flattered. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile and nod. No matter what, the stone in his heart had been lifted, and the next step was clear. He had to increase his strength as much as he could and find Zhang Liju. Other than that, everything else was secondary. Of course. The ghostly thing snickered and returned to the topic at hand. All right, I've said all that needs to be said. Hurry up and start cultivating. Don't waste this great opportunity. All right, do you want to scout the surroundings first? Lin Yi didn't plan on exploring this place alone, but at the very least, he needed to know the surroundings like the back of his hand. Otherwise, he might be targeted by some scary being in the middle of his practice. That's not necessary. I'll use my divine sense to keep an eye on the surroundings, and I'll let you know if anything strange happens. The ghost said. In his current state, he didn't dare say anything else, but at least he had absolute confidence in his divine sense. Not only did it not deteriorate, but it had also improved quite a bit compared to when he was at his peak. After all, this was the only thing he could rely on. All right, I'll leave it to you then, Senior. Lin Yi nodded. In fact, even if the ghost didn't keep watch for him, he still had the jade space to warn him. No matter what happened, he would be able to react in time. There was nothing to worry about. After that, Lin Yi turned around and told the spirit bird not to go too far away. Then, he leaped onto a high platform next to him. Not only was this underground space empty, but the terrain was also quite strange. Every 100 or so feet, there was a tall, narrow platform. Some of them were directly connected to the top of the swamp, while others were a bit off. The platform that Lin Yi chose just happened to be able to reach the swamp. Standing on the high platform, Lin Yi's body was only a foot away from the swamp. Although he didn't sink into it, the murderous aura of the 5 elements would emerge from time to time. Sometimes, it would affect Lin Yi's body. Lin Yi didn't wrap his body with qi like he did when he first came down. After all, the murderous aura of the 5 elements would ignore him, and he wouldn't be able to practice. However, he didn't dare to touch the murderous aura of the 5 elements too rashly, so he didn't go deep into the swamp. Instead, he chose this high platform that was just a little bit above ground. Chapter 45-48. The murderous aura of the 5 elements did not completely come out, but only a small part of it came out from the mud like a dragon swinging its tail. At the same time, it did not directly touch Lin Yi. Lin Yi was just touched by the edge of it. However, it was just a little bit. But it was enough to make Lin Yi feel that he could not bear it. Asterisk, don't look at the insignificant aftermath at the edge, even invisible to the naked eye. But Lin Yi could still clearly feel the terrible power of the murderous aura of the 5 elements. At this moment, there was only one emotion in his heart. No wonder the murderous aura of the 5 elements could kill everything. Even the existence of the ghost did not dare to go deep into it. No wonder the ghost just asked him to use genuine qi to protect his body, otherwise, he would have been killed. The murderous aura of the 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other. The 5 basic attributes of the murderous aura were integrated into one. This was not as simple as 1 plus 1. Just take the aftermath of the impact on Lin Yi's body. If each attribute of the murderous aura was taken out separately, even if Lin Yi did not use any protection, with his current physical strength, these attributes of the murderous aura could not hurt a hair on his body at all. It could be said that it was insignificant. But now, after these 5 attributes of the murderous aura were all integrated into the 5 elements of the 5 elements, the power increased more than thousands of times. Even if Linny was very careful, he still almost could not bear it. He was about to fall from the high platform on the spot. Fortunately, he held it with his hands in time and gritted his teeth to bear it. What did it feel like to be sliced into 1,000 pieces? Linny had only talked about it casually before, but this time, he was experiencing it for real. Even if his body was strong and his heart strong, he wouldn't be able to endure it if he didn't have the resolve to do so. Without this resolve, it didn't matter how strong he was. The time when the murderous aura of the 5 elements touched him was actually only a short moment, not even a blink of an eye. But in the eyes of Lin Yi, this moment was extremely long, and other people felt that a day was like a year. However, for Lin Yi, whose body felt like it was being sliced by knives, every second felt like a year. In just a short moment, Lin Yi felt as if he had just taken a shower. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat from head to toe. Phew! Finally successfully withstanding the first close contact with the murderous aura of the 5 elements, Lin Yi let out a long breath of turbid air as if he had survived a disaster. Even the pressure that the West Mountain Elder gave him was nothing more than this. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. This murderous aura of the 5 elements is really terrifying. There is actually such a terrifying thing in the world. This time, I have learned something new. You brat, just be content. The power of the 5 elements murderous chi is not something that any human or spirit beast can resist. If it was another expert, let alone a mere gold core stage, even if it was a nascent soul stage cultivator, you would have died without a doubt. Only a freak like you with the 5 elements spiritual root can withstand it without missing an arm or a leg. There was a hint of envy in the ghostly thing's tone. Even in his previous heyday, he would never dare to use the murderous aura of the 5 elements to temper his body like Lin Yi. This was something that he didn't even dare to think about. Only a freak like Lin Yi could have such an opportunity and luck. It must be known that the stronger the tempering, the faster the improvement. This was an unchanging truth since ancient times. Of course, the premise was that he could survive. Otherwise, it would be purely courting death. The murderous aura of the 5 elements is so terrifying. Senior, you should have said it earlier. Fortunately, I was careful enough and didn't jump in directly. I only suffered a little bit of aftermath. Otherwise, if I was directly hit by the murderous aura of the 5 elements, then I would be dead. Linny spat out his tongue in fear. This was the truth. The experience just now had already made him understand that although his unique physique of the 5 elements spiritual root could use the murderous aura of the 5 elements to cultivate, it was simply a fool's dream to completely withstand it. At most, his endurance was much stronger than other cultivators. Hey, I don't have the attribute of the 5 elements, and I have never really touched the murderous aura of the 5 elements. How would I know that this thing is so powerful? The ghost thing curled its lips disapprovingly. Of course, it was also familiar with Lin Yi's temperament. It knew that Lin Yi would not rashly advance. Otherwise, it would not be so irresponsible. At least, it would remind him. Lin Yi was suddenly speechless. He looked up at the top of his head with lingering fear. With a little carelessness, the murderous aura of the 5 elements that would emerge from time to time could become the king of hell. This was not a joke. Don't be silly. Tell me, how is the effect? The ghost thing asked with interest. In such a short moment, what effect can it have? Linny couldn't help but laugh when he heard the words. However, in the middle of the words, his whole body suddenly seemed to be struck by lightning, and he was suddenly stunned. It was reasonable to say that any kind of cultivation method was painstaking. It must be persisted for a long time to see obvious effects. There was no cultivation method in the world that could immediately see the effect. Even the evil cultivation method could not be so fast, unless one took medicine, and it must be the best medicine to see the effect immediately. Chapter 45-49. Of course it's normal. You have the 5 elements spiritual root, So your compatibility with the five elements murderous aura can be said to be perfect. The five elements murderous aura is a natural tonic for you. If you cultivate in the five elements murderous aura, in the words of us spirit beasts, it's called natal cultivation. It's very normal for you to improve by leaps and bounds every day. There's nothing to be surprised about. The ghost thing was not worried at all. Natal cultivation? What does that mean? Linny was slightly stunned. This was the first time he had heard of this term. As the name suggests, it's a cultivation method that God has given you. Any other cultivation method is going astray. Either your progress is too slow, or you'll be possessed by the devil. Natal cultivation is the good fortune that all spirit beasts dream of. Not even 1 in 10 million spirit beasts can truly realize it. It's something that can't be obtained even if you beg for it. The ghost thing sighed with emotion. Why? According to what you said, natal cultivation should be the most suitable cultivation method for you. As long as a spirit beast has a little bit of comprehension, it shouldn't be that difficult to find the most suitable cultivation method for you, right? Linny couldn't help but ask curiously. That's right, but we spirit beasts are different from you human cultivators. Even if you human cultivators have different physiques and talents, you're all of the same clan after all. You can learn from each other. However, there are more than 10 million spirit beasts, especially many high-level spirit beasts that are inherited from the same bloodline. How can there be so many templates for us to learn from? The ghost thing paused for a moment and continued. Moreover, as long as it's a high-level spirit beast, its racial talents are often very unique. Even if it finds the natal cultivation method, it must have a corresponding unique cultivation environment. Unless it's extremely lucky, it's easier said than done to find such a perfect cultivation place. That's true. Linny nodded in realization. If he was a spirit beast, if he hadn't been forced to escape into the five-poisoned swamp, even if he knew that he had the five-element spiritual root, he would never have thought that there was such a different world under the swamp. Natal cultivation was even more impossible to talk about. Originally, the sudden appearance of the West Mountain Elder was a calamity for Lin E. For Lin E, it was a calamity, but now it seemed like it was a blessing instead of a curse. In fact, recently, Lin E had a feeling that the rich vital energy in his jade pendant space seemed to be faintly decreasing. He didn't know why. Maybe it was Lin Yi's own illusion, or maybe it was because after his strength continued to increase, the supply of genuine qi in the space of the jade pendant was not enough for Lin E. Anyway, one thing was very clear, and that was the effect of the space of the jade pendant on his cultivation was not as obvious as before. At the very least, his cultivation speed had unknowingly dropped by a large margin. However, even if Linny was aware of this, it was useless. The effect of the space of the jade pendant becoming weaker was only relative to the past. If compared to the outside world, it was still incomparable. Therefore, Lin E could only continue to rely on the spiritual qi in the space of the jade pendant to practice as usual. But now, by chance, he suddenly found a place with a higher concentration of spiritual qi than the space of the jade pendant. Moreover, he could use the murderous aura of the five elements to carry out natal cultivation at any time. For Linny, this was simply a unique treasure land. In the future, when he went out, he really had to thank the West Mountain Elder sect. While the two were talking, the warning sound of the jade pendant sounded again. Not far from the side, another murderous aura of the five elements surged out. Just like before, Linny was still hit by it. His body still felt like it was being twisted by a knife. But even if Linny had just persevered, now that he knew the great benefits, it was even more impossible for him to be discouraged midway. He was being tempered by the aftermath of the murderous aura of the five elements. The only thing Linny had to do now was to clench his teeth and persevere. Every time he was tempered by the aftermath, the strength of his body's genuine qi would increase by a level. Even the strength of his physical body would also undergo earth-shaking changes. This kind of arduous tempering was even more effective than those elixirs. After taking elixirs, one's strength would be like a castle in the air. At the very least, one would need a period of time to stabilize one's strength. Otherwise, it would be extremely easy for one's foundation to be unstable, which would lead to the tragic consequences of qi deviation. However, this kind of tempering was different. Every bit of growth was real strength. Not only would one's foundation not weaken because of this, it would only become stronger. Once, twice, thrice. What Linny did next was to keep repeating. Each time was an extremely difficult challenge, but each time he could benefit a lot. Of course, this was directly proportional to the risk. In just an hour, Linny had been coaxed down the pillar of the high platform for a total of 3 times. It was not because his willpower had weakened, but because these 3 times he was too close to the murderous aura of the 5 elements. With his current strength, he could at most bear the aftermath, and it was still far from being tempered by the murderous aura of the 5 elements. Fortunately, Linny had a physique of the 5 elements, and his tolerance to the murderous aura of the 5 elements was much stronger than ordinary people. Otherwise, just these 3 brushes with the murderous aura of the 5 elements would be enough to kill him. 3 days, Linny had been persisting for 3 days. This time was insignificant for any cultivator. It could be said to be a snap of the fingers. However, for Lin Yi, who had been tempered and tortured by the murderous aura of the 5 elements, this might be the longest 3 days he had ever experienced. The test of physical and mental perseverance could be said to have reached the limit. But correspondingly, the benefits that Linny had obtained were also unparalleled. When he came in, he was only at the peak of the middle stage of gold core. However, after these 3 days of baptism and tempering, Lin Yi had impressively touched the barrier of the late stage of gold core. He was only a step away from going further. This result made Lin Yi very happy. There was the covetous Shishan old sect outside. Every bit of strength was a bit more capital to protect his life. Every time he broke through a layer, it might be the distance between life and death. However, although he had successfully touched the barrier of the late stage of gold core, it was still difficult to break through in a short time. After all, Lin Yi had just reached the peak of the middle stage of gold core. Although he was the strongest gold core master who had a perfect breakthrough, it was impossible to break through the threshold of the late stage of gold core like drinking plain water. He still needed a suitable opportunity. This opportunity could be taking the gold core or other special circumstances. As long as the opportunity came, with the strength of Lin Yi, the breakthrough was naturally a matter of course. Chapter 45-50. But good steel should be used on the blade's edge. Linny didn't plan on using the fruit right now. After all, it was a treasure that was hard to find in this world, and he might not be able to find it again in this lifetime. He had to save it for the most crucial moment. Cent pound at the moment, Linny felt that it was not the most critical time yet. He had a faint hunch that even if he did not use the myriad golden dan fruit, he would have a chance to break through to the late stage of gold core. Because every time he was tempered by the aftermath of the 5 elements' murderous aura, he could clearly feel the throbbing sign that he was about to break through. However, what made Linny feel a little pity was that although the sign was very obvious and strong, he did not really break through after every time he endured the aftermath. It just remained at the level of the sign. It seemed that he could not break through successfully. Linny knew that this state of eagerness to break through would not last long. If he could not break through before it disappeared, he would have to wait for the next sign to appear. Then, he did not know when. Cultivation was like rowing a boat against the current. There were many examples of people who could not break through when it was time to break through, and thus fell into a quagmire. Fortune comes from risk. It seems that you have to take a little risk. The ghost suggested. Understood. Linny nodded. Although he had always been cautious, he would never refuse some necessary risks. Just like now, there were only 2 ways for him to take advantage of the situation to break through. The first was to take the golden dan fruit, but he did not have this plan, so he could only use the ready-made 5 elements murderous aura in front of him to force out his greater potential. If it was someone else, they would definitely not dare to do this, but Linny could. Since he could bear the aftermath of the 5 elements murderous aura, he could naturally go further and try to get closer to the 5 elements murderous aura. Of course, the premise was that he had to master this degree, otherwise it would not be called stimulating his potential. It would be courting death. Taking a deep breath, Lin Yi moved to a high platform beside him. Originally, When he stood on this platform, he could only reach the 5 poisoned swamp above his head. But now, he could directly enter the 5 poisoned swamp on this platform. Sure enough, Linny was immediately targeted by a killing intent of the 5 elements. If the 5 poisoned swamp was a pond, and the 5 elements of murderous aura were piranhas, then Lin-Yi was a living bait. When he was standing on the high platform, Lin-Yi was still floating above the water. That was why the piranhas weren't aroused. At most, they were splashed a little. But now, the bait was directly thrown into the pond, and the piranhas immediately revealed their ferocious nature. Perhaps because Linny had the attribute of the 5 elements, to a certain extent, he had the same smell as the 5 elements of murderous aura, so the 5 elements of murderous aura did not gather in the distance. Otherwise, even if Linny had 10,000 lives, he would still die without a burial place. But even so, just the 5 elements of murderous aura beside him was enough to kill him. Previously, when facing the aftermath of the 5 elements of murderous aura, Lin-Yi was already suffering. Now, he was directly facing the 5 elements of murderous aura. His whole body was trembling uncontrollably. This was the biological instinct when facing a fatal crisis. Even if Linny wanted to control it, he couldn't, unless he was already a dead man. Be careful. Don't go overboard. At this time, even the ghostly thing was frightened. Although this was his suggestion, even he couldn't stay calm when it really came to this moment. After all, he was on Lin-Yi's body. He could feel the horror of the 5 elements of murderous aura. This thing could really kill someone if he was not careful. If Linny died, even he would be unlucky. I know, Linny responded in a deep voice. At the same time, the 5 elements of murderous aura slammed into his body. Lin-Yi suddenly clenched his teeth so hard that they bled. All the muscles on his body trembled like a sieve. The tempering of the aftermath before was already like being cut by thousands of knives, but the pain at this moment was more than 100 times. It's coming. Under the extreme pain, the real chi in Lin-Yi's body suddenly moved wildly spontaneously forming a confrontation with the 5 elements of murderous aura outside, and it skyrocketed uncontrollably. The opportunity for a breakthrough had come. The thick barrier in front of the late stage of gold core suddenly loosened under the crazy impact of the real chi. The breakthrough was close at hand. Linny didn't dare to neglect it. He quickly lowered his body and withdrew from the 5 poisoned swamp. Without saying anything, he jumped down from the high platform and sat cross-legged, concentrating on the breakthrough. First, he was directly facing the tempering of the 5 elements of murderous aura. This moment was already the limit that he could endure. Second, the breakthrough process could not be disturbed at all. Otherwise, if it was light, he would be injured. If it was heavy, he would be possessed by the devil. There were many cases where he even died on the spot. The 5 elements of murderous aura could only be used to find the opportunity for a breakthrough. If he wanted to break through while enduring the tempering of the 5 elements of murderous aura, it was simply courting death. Even if he was courting death, he should not seek it in such a way. Everything was ready, and the east wind had arrived. This time, Lin-Yi's breakthrough could be said to be a matter of course. In just half an hour, he was reborn without any wind or danger, and his whole temperament was completely new. Although there seemed to be only a thin line between the peak of the middle stage of gold core and the late stage of gold core, the meaning of the two was completely different. Before, he was just a typical gold core expert, but now he had reached a level where he could look forward to a higher realm. After entering the late stage of gold core, most cultivators had already begun to prepare for the next breakthrough to the Yuanying realm. Chu Bubi was an example. Ordinary cultivators were still like this, but Lin-Yi, as the strongest gold core cultivator who had a perfect breakthrough, the process from the late stage of gold core to the great perfection of gold core was much faster than ordinary people. Stepping into the late stage of gold core meant that he was not far from the Yuanying realm. After carefully feeling the new power in his body, Lin-Yi took a deep breath. From the peak of the middle stage of gold core to the late stage of gold core, he could clearly feel that the improvement in strength was not a little bit. It was simply a skyrocketing increase. Of course, Lin-Yi did not show too much joy. Not being surprised by favors or disgraces, This had always been Lin Yi's style. Moreover, after seeing the West Mountain Old Master, who was an evil cultivator, and the even more terrifying Spirit Beast guards of the Spirit Beast clan, this little improvement in strength was not worth mentioning for those high and mighty super-existences. Naturally, Lin Yi would not be ecstatic for this little breakthrough. However, when Lin Yi was gradually able to fully withstand the aftermath of the five elements' murderous qi, he found that the improvement effect was not as exaggerated as at the beginning, although it was still much better than the Jade Pendant space. But compared to before, it was clearly several times worse. This was a matter of course. After gradually adapting to the aftermath of the murderous aura of the five elements, the effect of the tempering would gradually weaken. When Lin Yi could completely adapt to it, it would be like eating and drinking normally. There would be no effect at all. Therefore, if Lin Yi wanted to go further, the only way was to increase the intensity. A little closer to the five elements' murderous qi. Little by little, the distance between himself and the five elements' murderous qi was what Lin Yi had been doing. Every time he got closer, it meant that his strength was stronger. If one day he could calmly face the five elements' murderous qi, and even casually wave a genuine qi that could be comparable to the five elements' murderous qi, then he must have stood at the peak of the entire Heaven Stage Island. Of course, this day was still far away. Cultivation knew no time. Day after day, Lin Yi used the five elements' murderous qi to temper his body. After he gradually adapted to this crazy closed-door cultivation rhythm, 3 months almost passed in the blink of an eye. Fleeting. Usually, Lin Yi would cultivate on the high platform close to the five elements' murderous qi. Every few days, when his strength increased, he would change to a high platform that was closer to the five elements' murderous qi. If he was close to breaking through, then he would take the risk to go deep into the five poisoned swamp and directly face the five elements' murderous qi to stimulate his own limit. Accompanied by a clear cry, a nimble shadow flew from afar and circled back and forth around Lin Yi's position. It was the spirit bird that Huang Xiaodao had left for him. Perhaps it was because the spirit qi here was very rich, but in the past 3 months, although Lin Yi had never seen the spirit bird actively cultivate and only cared about playing, if compared to 3 months ago, he would find that this guy had been reborn. Whether it was the momentum or the speed, they were a lot better than before. Even the originally docile and harmless eyes faintly had a few points of sharpness unique to high-level flying spirit beasts. This was an unexpected surprise. Phew! Lin Yi let out a long breath, stood up and stretched his body, a smile on his face as he jumped onto the spirit bird's back. There's 2 months left until the mission deadline. It's time to go back, he muttered to himself. At this moment, after experiencing a full 3 months of hard cultivation, Lin Yi didn't seem to be much different from before at first glance. Chapter 45-52. However, being able to advance 3 levels in a row was not purely because of the unique cultivation environment here. In the process, Lin Yi refined the 10,000 crossing golden elixir fruit that he had previously harvested into a superb golden elixir. Taking it together with his cultivation could have such a terrifying effect. Of course, even so, it was enough to make people's jaws drop. The golden elixir great perfection was only 1 step away from the nascent soul stage, and the golden elixir had just been used up. Although Lin Yi could continue to choose to retreat here, this was different from the previous consecutive breakthroughs. It was not a success that could be achieved through tempering. Because he was the strongest golden elixir stage master who had a perfect breakthrough, and his strength was deep enough, coupled with the unique cultivation environment here, Lin Yi's extraordinary breakthrough was unexpected, but it was still reasonable. It was not as outrageous as it seemed at first glance. However, condensing the nascent soul was different. Strength, opportunity, state of mind, and elixir could not be lacking. Only after all preparations were made could there be a chance of success. Lin Yi had just broken through consecutively. Even if he did not need to specifically stabilize his strength because of the 5 elements killing qi, it was obviously not to the point where everything was ready. It was not impossible to continue to stay here and cultivate, but the cost-effectiveness was not as high as before. Linny knew that blindly cultivating was definitely not the best way to cultivate. Only by relaxing could he get twice the result with half the effort. What's more, there were only 2 months left before the deadline. After deducting the time spent on the long journey, there was not much time left. After instructing the spirit bird, Lin Yi immediately covered himself and the spirit bird with his majestic chi. This kind of thing could not be done when he came in, but now that his strength had skyrocketed by 3 levels, it was no longer a problem. The spirit bird carried Lin Yi and immediately rushed into the 5-poison swamp above. Although the resistance of the swamp was great, with Lin Yi's chi and the spirit bird's improvement in the past 3 months, there was no sign of strain at this moment. At this rate, flying out of the 5-poison swamp would not be a difficult task. What was worth mentioning was that from the beginning to the end, the 5-elemental murderous aura that resembled a flood dragon completely ignored Lin Yi and the spirit bird. Even when they accidentally touched it, there was no reaction at all. It could be seen that they really treated Lin Yi's true chi as their own. The man and bird traveled through the swamp for about an hour, and Lin Yi could clearly feel that the resistance was getting weaker and weaker. It seemed like they would be able to see the sky again soon. The mysterious space below was still full of light, but Lin Yi couldn't help but feel refreshed. However, that feeling was obviously incomparable to the feeling on the ground. Only by returning to the ground could one truly experience what it meant to breathe freely. This was an innate human instinct. Finally, just as he was about to charge out of the 5-poison swamp, the ghostly voice suddenly sounded in his mind. "Stop. Senior, what's wrong?" Although Lin Yi did not know the reason, he hurriedly stopped the spirit bird and looked around vigilantly. He thought that he had been targeted by some dangerous existence, but the jade pendant did not have the slightest intention of warning him. Could it be that the West Mountain Old Sect Master was still guarding above? It had already been 3 months. It was unlikely, no matter how much the West Mountain Old Sect Master hated him to the bone, as an evil cultivator of the mountain opening period. As the number 2 figure of the West Mountain Evil Sect, it was impossible for him to be so idle that he would keep guarding this 5-poison swamp, right? Any normal person would also think that they had died without a corpse left. Could it be that evil cultivators were not only abnormal in terms of their cultivation methods? Even their brains were abnormal? "There's someone above," the ghostly thing said in a deep voice. "What? There's really someone guarding it? Could it really be that old monster of the West Mountain Old Sect?" Lin Yi was shocked. As the mud of the 5-poison swamp could isolate divine sense, even if they were very close to the ground, he still could not sense anything outside at all. But he still couldn't sense the situation outside at all, and he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Senior, could it be that your divine sense isn't affected by this swamp?" Of course it's affected, but it's only weakened a lot. It's not to the extent where you can't feel anything at all and become a living blind. The ghostly thing laughed. This time it was Lin Yi's turn to be envious. Both of them used the same divine sense, but his divine sense was isolated at will. He could not sense anything from the 5-poison swamp at all, while the ghostly thing's divine sense was only weakened. It was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. You don't have to look like this. If you want to break through the isolation of the swamp, the strength of your divine sense must reach an amazing level. Only a very few high-level spirit beasts and a small number of top human masters standing at the top can do it. Your current level is too low. You haven't even started the most basic divine sense skills. You're still far away from this step. The ghostly thing explained with a smile. "I see. No wonder I was scanned by the vermilion bird's divine sense when I was in the dense forest of the South Island. At that time, for safety's sake, I clearly smeared the swamp mud on my body. I thought it was because the swamp mud had been smeared on my body for too long, and after getting rid of it, it couldn't block the perception of divine sense." Lin Yi smiled bitterly. That's indeed the case. However, even if the swamp mud didn't get rid of it, you couldn't have escaped the perception of the vermilion bird. Although I have always disliked this guy, I have to say that although this guy is inferior to me in every aspect, it is not inferior to me in the aspect of divine sense, which is what I am best at. The ghostly thing sighed. Lin Yi nodded. He didn't find it strange at all. After all, The vermilion bird was one of the most powerful beings in the spirit beast clan. If it didn't even have this much strength, how would it be able to control those wild and powerful spirit beasts? Senior, what's the situation up there now? Linny pointed to the top of his head and asked. What he wanted to know the most now was whether the one guarding up there was the West Mountain Elder. Listen to it yourself. The ghostly thing snorted. If I could hear it myself, why would I need to ask you, Senior? Linny was suddenly speechless. Hee, of course, you can't hear it by yourself. But with me here, if I want you to hear it, you can hear it. The ghostly thing smiled mysteriously. Then, it used some kind of magical method, and Linny actually suddenly heard the movement up there. Awesome. It's simply a magical skill. Linny's eyes suddenly lit up as he praised repeatedly. He could not help but ask curiously, Senior, how did you do it? Chapter 45:53. This can be connected? Then why haven't I seen you use this trick before? Linny couldn't help but ask. In his opinion, this was a real divine skill. Although the ghostly thing had no combat power in its current state, its divine sense was absolutely unparalleled in the world. If he and the ghostly thing could share their divine sense, it would be equivalent to having a powerful and heaven-defying golden finger. The practical value of this was not small. Do you think this is easy? When the ghostly thing heard this, it curled its lips and said, This kind of thing sounds like it's not a big deal, but it's very troublesome to actually do it. It will consume a lot of physical strength and real chi that I have accumulated. This time, I just want to let you see it. If it's not necessary, I don't have the capital to be so extravagant. Oh, okay. Linny nodded and then did not say anything more. He began to concentrate on using the ghostly thing's divine sense and began to observe the situation on the ground. If the West Mountain Elder was really guarding there, then it would be troublesome. After a careful exploration, Linny used the ghostly thing's divine sense to lock onto two people on the ground. They were stationed not far from the Five Poison Swamp, but to his relief, the West Mountain Elder was not among the two people. Both of them were strong men with the strength of dragons and tigers. Their strength was not very high. One was in the middle stage of the Gold Core stage, and the other was at the peak of the middle stage of the Gold Core stage. They were sitting on the trunk of a big tree a few miles away from the Five Poison Swamp, monitoring the movements of the Five Poison Swamp from afar. Why did the breath of these two people feel a little familiar? Linny was secretly a little surprised. His memory had always been very good. As long as he came into contact with passers-by, he would more or less have some impression of them. At this moment, sitting on the trunk of the tree and monitoring the Five Poison Swamp, he clearly saw these two people before, but he could not remember for a moment, so he could only continue to observe. Motherf Asterisk Kerr, we are two dignified gold medal escorts, but we don't accept so many good and lucrative jobs. Why were we sent to this Sage Asterisk TTY place to monitor? From day to night, we look at a pile of broken swamp, and not even a ghost can be seen. I really don't know what is there to monitor. He must be sick in the head. One of the bald men complained indignantly while gnawing on his dry rations. That's right. We're at the edge of the South Island. If a spirit beast comes out, we'll be in serious trouble. Even if we're lucky enough not to encounter one, the smell is unbearable. It's the first time I've seen such a disgusting swamp. It's colorful, and the smell is so strong. If I continue to endure it, my nose will be ruined. Another black-faced man complained. Sigh, just bear with it. It's only been a month now. We can only change shifts after 2 months. Chief Escort Long has already ordered us to do so. Even if we pinch our noses until we bleed, we can only do it. The bald man shook his head and smiled bitterly. Chief Escort Long? Long Kiba? When Linny heard these words, he immediately remembered that these two people were actually escorts from the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. It was no wonder that he had an impression of them. However, why were these two fellows stationed here? We're really unlucky to have drawn the lot. But speaking of this, Chief Escort Long can't be blamed for it. He had no choice. Who asked the West Mountain Elder to order us to monitor the Five Poison Swamp day and night? Even our Chief Escort Long wouldn't dare to say no in front of such a big shot. The black-faced man clicked his tongue and sighed. Hee hee. As soon as the big shot opens his mouth, we minions have to run errands. How can we reason with this? I really can't figure it out. Since that Lingy jumped into this *T swamp, his corpse should have long disappeared. Moreover, it has already been 3 months, and there hasn't been any movement from the beginning to the end. What is there for the West Mountain Old Sect to be worried about? Must they force us to guard this place? The bald man curled his lips speechlessly. How can we guess the thoughts of such a big shot? We just do what the higher-ups say. Brother, do you dare to disobey them? The black-faced man squinted his eyes and teased. How is that possible? I wouldn't dare even if I had 10 lives. The bald man shrunk his neck and could only comfort himself. Fortunately, there is still 1 more month before this hard work is over. Moreover, we can get a sum of spirit jades as a reward, so it is not a big loss. After 1 month, we brothers will go back and find a good restaurant to have a good meal. Damn it. My mouth is so bland that birds are coming out of my mouth. I only eat some broken dry rations all day long. I don't even have wine to drink. If I had known this would happen, I would have secretly brought a few jars over. It's nothing. When we get back, we have to find the best house of drunkards and have a good meal. Io, brother, look at me. I'm so hungry that I've lost so much weight. Even my body is tanned. The black-faced man complained with a bitter expression. Nonsense. You're a black man through and through. How can you get tan like this? What a load of crap. The bald man laughed heartily. Listening to the contents of these two people's complaints, Lin Yi, who was lurking in the 5-poison swamp, could not help but be shocked and curse. 3 months had passed, and the West Mountain Elder still didn't give up. He even sent people to guard here and monitor the swamp. This old monster was too damn cautious, wasn't he? Logically speaking, ordinary people didn't know the dangers of the 5-poison swamp, but the West Mountain Elder definitely knew it clearly. According to common sense, it was impossible for anyone to come out of the 5-poison swamp alive. Now that 3 months had passed, he still didn't give up. However, thinking about all the previous magical deeds of Lin Yi, when he was chased all the way by the West Mountain Elder for the first time, he managed to escape to the interior of the South Island. Moreover, he was able to escape from the South Island unscathed. The degree of danger was no less than that of the 5-poison swamp. Since he could escape from death at that time, it seemed understandable that he could do it again. In fact, to be honest, the West Mountain Elder also believed that Lin Yi definitely had no bones left. After all, once he jumped into the 5-poison swamp, even he had no chance of survival, let alone Lin Yi's insignificant strength. However, the precedent of Lin Yi escaping from death was there, and the West Mountain Elder had specially investigated Lin Yi's deeds a while ago. He had heard all kinds of legends that had happened to him, for fear that an accident would happen again this time. Chapter 45-54. What are you going to do now? The ghost thing asked with interest. Lin Yi pondered for a moment. In this situation, he had 2 choices. One was to rush out without hesitation. After all, the strength of the 2 dragon boat escorts was so weak that he could kill them in a second, leaving no chance for them to escape. Of course, there was another choice, which was to change his original intention and return to the underground space to continue practicing in seclusion. Anyway, because the 5-poison swamp isolated the divine sense, the 2 dragon boat escorts above had not noticed Lin Yi yet. As long as Lin Yi practiced in seclusion for a while, no matter how suspicious the West Mountain Elder was, he would give up one day. At that time, he could come out without being noticed. Of the 2 choices, the latter was obviously safer, but in this way, he would have to change his original intention. There were only 2 months left before the deadline of the task. If Lin Yi stayed, it would inevitably expire. On the other hand, although the former choice was radical, it was actually not risky. With the strength of Lin Yi's current peak of gold core, if he could not even kill 2 small fries in a second, it would be really funny. Forget it. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, I'd better go back to the underground space to continue practicing. I originally planned to prepare to condense my nascent soul after returning to the North Island, but now it seems that I can only try to break through here. Lin Yi rubbed his head. and then ordered the spirit bird to return to the underground space. Haha, I was going to remind you, but it seems that I still underestimated you. The ghost thing saw this and smiled knowingly. He thought that Lin Yi would directly attack without saying anything. After all, his strength had skyrocketed recently. Any normal person would be full of confidence and would certainly not hesitate to attack the two small fries. But if that was the case, then Lin Yi would really be in trouble. There was something on the two small fries that could not be ignored. It was difficult for ordinary people to notice, but it could not escape the divine sense of the ghost thing. It was the extremely small jade token on the bald man's wrist. This jade token itself didn't have any power. Once it was attacked, it would shatter. Moreover, another jade token that was connected to it would also shatter at the same time. Needless to say, the jade token must be at the headquarters of the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. If Linny made a move on them, the West Mountain Old Sect would immediately sense it. Once the West Mountain Old Sect arrived, even if Lin Yi's strength had skyrocketed, his fate would not be any better than before. I'm not stupid. Lin Yi smiled faintly. With his insight, even if it was his first time connecting with this ghostly thing's divine sense, he would never let go of any detail. He would never be so overconfident that he would directly make a move without observing clearly. A small shrimp was indeed not a big deal, and he could casually trample it to death. However, many things were often defeated by this kind of small shrimp. Although he was now at the consummation of Jindan, and his confidence was much more than before, but even so, he did not have the slightest confidence to face the old master of Shishan. A real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall. He had to endure. Returning to the underground space, Lin Yi was not in a hurry to continue his retreat. He was now at the threshold of the consummation of Jindan, and there was only the last layer of window paper between him and the Yuanying stage. It seemed that it would break at the first touch. Of course, this was just the appearance. If condensing the Yuanying stage was so easy, then the masters of the Yuanying stage would have been everywhere. Reaching the current stage, there was no effect to continue the retreat. Even if he used the murderous aura of the 5 elements to temper his body, it was useless, because it was like a bottle filled with water. No matter how much water was poured into it, it was futile. If he wanted to go further, there was only one way, and that was to change to a bigger bottle. From the Jindan stage to the Yuanying stage, the so-called condensing the Yuanying stage, to put it bluntly, was actually to change to a bigger and stronger bottle. If the Jindan stage was a pond, then the Yuanying stage was a giant lake. The two could not be mentioned in the same breath. This process was typical of breaking and then building. He must have the awareness of putting himself at death's door, and at the same time, he must make all kinds of preparations. It was not something that could be achieved by blind practice. Lin Yi could only change his original intention now. It was obviously impossible to condense the Yuanying after returning to the North Island. In order not to waste time, condensing the Yuanying stage could only start now, and the first step was to refine the gathering nascent spirit elixir. Thanks to Chu Bubi, Lin Yi now had a whole nascent ginseng in his hand. If he put it up for auction in the market, the whole 5 heaven stage islands would be completely shocked. At that time, Lin Yi's name would be known by everyone, including those top existences who didn't show up in the world. Of course, this was just a saying. Lin Yi would not release the nascent ginseng even if he was out of his mind. Not to mention selling it, he could not even reveal a word about it, otherwise he would be killed. When he took out the nascent ginseng, the surrounding space was suddenly filled with fragrance. This smell almost made Lin Yi mistakenly think that he had returned to the Lufeng forest again. The spirit bird, who was playing not far away, immediately came over and stared at the nascent ginseng with burning eyes. Although it had never seen such a rare thing as the nascent ginseng, spirit beasts were born with the intuition of treasures of heaven and earth, so there was no possibility that it could not recognize it. Do you want to eat this? When Lin Yi saw the spirit bird's staring eyes, he immediately smiled. From the first time he met this bird, it had been carefree and optimistic. It was rare to see this expression. Chirp, chirp. The spirit bird repeatedly nodded its head like a human. Its eyes were still staring at the nascent ginseng without blinking, and it was desperately swallowing its saliva. You You know what's good for you. Linny scolded with a smile. Then he shook his head and said, however, I can't let you eat this thing. Not to mention a whole nascent ginseng. Even if I only let you eat a small piece, you won't be able to take it with your physique. Not only will there be no benefits, but you will also suffer internal injuries from eating it. At that time, I won't be able to explain it to Xiao Tao. Chirp, 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 chirp. The spirit bird looked at Lin Yi pitifully, then it looked at the nascent ginseng again. In the end, it could only withdraw its head, and it had a dejected look. When Lin Yi saw this, he couldn't help but laugh. What he said was the truth. The nascent ginseng was indeed a rare good thing in the world. Even a little bit of it would be a great supplement for a cultivator of his level. It was enough to make up for several years of bitter cultivation. However, it was also because of this that this thing couldn't be eaten carelessly. Once the supplement was overdone, it would become a life-threatening poison. This was a well-known truth. Chapter 45-55. What made Lin Yi even more speechless was that the spirit bird had been with Huang Xiaotao in the North Island for so many years, but it was only at the late stage of Zhuji realm. According to Huang Xiaotao, this guy hadn't upgraded for at least many years, and there was no sign of a breakthrough at all. However, now that it came to the South Island, the base camp of the Spirit Beast clan, it didn't concentrate on cultivation. It just casually played around and jumped 5 levels. How could he explain this? It could only be said that it was really impossible to think about the advancement of the Spirit Beast. There was no rule at all. After all, it couldn't be said that this was the way of cultivation of the Spirit Bird. Lin Yi didn't think that this guy had all 5 elements. However, even if the strength of the Spirit Bird skyrocketed, it still couldn't eat nascent ginseng raw at the late stage of gold core, not even a small piece. In fact, even Lin Yi, who was in the exceptional gold core realm, didn't dare to eat it raw. If it died because it couldn't bear the medicine of the nascent ginseng, it would really be a grievance. The only way to take nascent ginseng was to refine it into a gathering nascent golden pill. In this way, not only could it better take advantage of its huge medicine power, but it could also neutralize the medicine and make it gentle and harmless. What's more, condensing nascent soul didn't only need a treasure of heaven and earth like nascent ginseng, but also a variety of other elixirs. Without saying much, Lin Yi immediately began to refine the gathering nascent golden pill. Although it was an unattainable 6th grade elixir, Lin Yi was no stranger to it. When he was in Middle Island, he had already refined it for the will of heaven once, and for this reason, he had consulted Kai Zhongyang and Hou Guanqi, the 2 elixir refining experts. It could be said that he was familiar with it. But even so, Lin Yi didn't directly use a whole nascent ginseng, because he didn't need it at all. In theory, a small piece of nascent ginseng could already be refined into a gathering nascent golden pill. It would be a waste to directly use a whole nascent ginseng. What's more, even if he had been working hard to manage his own elixir reserves, it was impossible to take out such a large number of auxiliary elixirs at once. Moreover, although Lin Yi had the experience of refining successfully once before, it was still not enough. But this was, after all, a 6th grade medicinal pill. Even with the divine armament cauldron, there was still a possibility of failure. If something went wrong midway, wouldn't the whole nascent ginseng be ruined? Lin Yi couldn't take this risk, and there was no need for him to take it. He carefully cut 2 thin slices from the nascent soul ginseng. This was already enough. If he couldn't even refine 2 slices of nascent soul ginseng into a golden pill, then it couldn't be said that Lin Yi's alchemy skill was not good enough, but that his bad luck hadn't passed yet. There was no need to think about condensing a nascent soul for now. It was better for him to wash up and sleep, lest he wasted God's gift recklessly. After preparing all the elixirs, Lin Yi entered the space of the jade pendant and rested for a while. When everything was ready, he took out the divine armament cauldron and began to refine the condensing nascent soul golden pill. After entering the pill recipe, the Shinnong medicine cauldron could start to refine the pill automatically. In theory, as long as the Shinnong medicine cauldron could bear it, then the possibility of failure was much lower than other ordinary alchemists. The previous near-perfect success rate was proof. Moreover, there was already a successful experience. But even so, Lin Yi still couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Of course, it was useless no matter how nervous he was at this time. The only thing Lin could do was to control the supply of true qi. In addition, he could only rely on the divine armament cauldron that Han Jingjing left for him. The whole refining process lasted for a whole day and night. During the process, it was unknown whether it was because the divine armament cauldron couldn't bear the impact, or because he put in 2 elixirs at once, but the divine armament cauldron frequently buzzed and vibrated. There were even several extremely violent and crazy vibrations, causing Lin Yi to think that the pill furnace was going to explode. After all, the previous refining of the condensing nascent soul golden pill did not have such a situation. But there was no other way. Lin Yi had no choice but to persevere. Fortunately, the Shinong medicine cauldron finally survived to the end. When the voice of Han Jingjing announcing the end of the alchemy sounded on the tablet, Lin Yi's whole body was soaked in sweat. He had been on tenterhooks for a whole day, and the pressure was even greater than when he faced the 5 elements killing qi tempering before. This was really not a job for a human. After letting out a long breath, Lin Yi couldn't wait to open the divine armament cauldron. The inherent unique fragrance of the nascent soul ginseng greeted his nose, but compared with the original smell, it was a little more refreshing. At this moment, the divine armament cauldron was quietly lying in the freshly made, condensing nascent soul golden pill. Seeing the condensing nascent soul golden pill formed in the divine armament cauldron, Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch. He was taken aback. To be precise, he was surprised and happy. Why are there 3? The condensing nascent soul golden pill in front of him did not have the elixir halo he had imagined. The quality could only be regarded as superior rather than superb. However, the number gave Lin Yi a big surprise. It was not 2 as he had imagined, but 3. Obviously, only 2 pieces of nascent soul ginseng were put in, and there were only 2 other supporting elixirs. In the end, 3 condensing nascent soul golden pills were refined. No wonder there were so many abnormalities in the process. No wonder the quality couldn't reach the desired superb quality. It was already great luck to produce 3 condensing nascent soul golden pills at once. If they were all superb quality, it would be really unreasonable. In any case, it was not a bad thing to have 1 more condensing nascent soul golden pill. Lin Yi's original bottom line was only 1. Now that he had produced 3, he was overjoyed. With only 1 condensing nascent soul golden pill, Lin Yi was somewhat uncertain about condensing a nascent soul. But now, he had no worries. Next, Lin Yi did not rush to condense a nascent soul. Instead, he meditated in the space under the 5-poison swamp. He continued like this for 3 days and 3 nights. After ensuring that his essence, qi, and spirit were all at the peak state, he slowly opened his eyes. After everything was ready, the first thing Lin Yi did was not directly take the condensing nascent soul golden pill. Instead, he dug a hole in the ground, not for anything else, but for a bath. Of course, it wasn't a normal bath. Practitioners at the golden core stage could control every pore on their body, and they could use their pure energy to get rid of even a speck of dust. They could go a year and a half without a bath. Lin Yi rarely had the mood to do this, but he couldn't not take a bath today. He wasn't using water today, but the star ink milk. Chapter 45-56. However, it was a matter of course for Lin Yi. After all, he had obtained a large jar of star ink milk from the Great Fire Lion and the Big Spider. It would be a waste not to use it. Moreover, the Great Fire Lion had said that the star ink milk would have the greatest effect when used for bathing. Now was the time to use it. After pouring the star ink milk all over the pit, Lin Yi jumped in without saying anything. However, there was another plop. Lin Yi couldn't help but stare at the jubilant spirit bird next to him. He didn't expect this guy to be so cunning. It actually jumped in with a satisfied look. Fortunately, the pit that Lin Yi made was not small. Otherwise, it really couldn't fit 1 person and 1 bird. Since the spirit bird wanted to join in the fun, Lin Yi didn't mind at all. Although the star ink milk didn't have a heaven-defying effect on a spirit beast like it, it was not a bad thing after all. Moreover, it wouldn't affect Lin Yi himself. After instructing the spirit bird, Lin Yi immediately sank his qi into his dantian and began to condense his nascent soul. However, the first step to condense his nascent soul was not to take the golden elixir, but to crush the core golden elixir in his dantian. As the name suggested, the golden elixir in the dantian was the source of power for all golden elixir stage masters. No matter what method was used, crushing the golden elixir was an extremely crazy and dangerous thing. If it was light, one would become disabled. If it was heavy, one would die directly. This was not a joke. Although condensing the nascent soul was a process of destruction and reconstruction, for other golden elixir stage masters, even those with extraordinary talent, they would never dare to take such a risk. At most, they would slowly reshape their golden elixir until it finally condensed into a nascent soul. After thousands of years of experiments, this was proven to be the most stable and reliable way to condense a nascent soul. However, Lin Yi obviously didn't intend to follow the crowd. Although this method was stable, the price of pursuing stability was the sacrifice of potential. In this case, even with the help of the star ink milk, it was impossible to become the strongest nascent soul stage master. If he really wanted to stand out, he could only carry out the 4 words, destruction and reconstruction, to the end. The risk of shattering one's own gold core was very high. It could be said that there was a slim chance of survival. If he didn't have so much astral ink milk, Lin Yi would never gamble with his life. But it was different now. This much astral ink milk was enough to ensure that he would remain safe and sound even after breaking his nascent core. Even if it couldn't last for a long time, if everything went smoothly, it should be able to last until he finally condensed his strongest nascent soul. That being said, it was foreseeable that everything would not go smoothly in the process. If there was an accident, no amount of astral ink milk would be able to save his life. Lin Yi rarely took risks, but this time, in order to become the strongest nascent soul, he had no choice but to take this risk. After being provoked by the West Mountain Old Sect Master and the Spirit Beast clan, if Lin Yi didn't take such a risk, then even if he became a nascent soul, he wouldn't be able to fight back. So, he had to fight with his life on the line. He mobilized the vital energy in his body to gather in his dantian and fiercely attacked his gold core, which was the source of vital energy. It was actually not difficult for ordinary gold core experts to break their own gold core. Void core experts only needed to think about it, and even solid core experts only needed to use a little bit of vital energy. However, Lin Yi was different. He had a perfect gold core. With the blessing of the power of the stars, the toughness of a perfect gold core could be said to be unprecedented. If Lin Yi wanted to break his own gold core, he had to hit himself with all his strength. This feeling was no less than 1,000 wild sand explosive fist in one's dantian. If one's willpower was slightly lacking, perhaps they would have fainted from the pain. Puff. Lin Yi groaned and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the perfect gold core in his dantian had collapsed. The movement in his body was so big that even the ghostly thing, a bystander, was shocked. It had seen many ruthless people, but it was the first time it had seen someone like Lin Yi who was so ruthless to himself. Men really have to be ruthless to themselves. You're awesome. The ghostly thing could not help but be speechless. Senior, you flatter me. It's not too bad. Lin Yi forced a smile. It was really hard for him to still be in the mood to answer at this juncture. As he spoke, Lin Yi once again forcibly mobilized his pure qi, completely shattering the perfect jindan that was already falling apart. At the same time, the star ink milk that was soaking outside seeped into his body through every pore, following his meridians all the way to his dantian. Originally, because the perfect gold core had been shattered, Lin Yi's dantian had also been seriously injured and was on the verge of destruction. The dantian was the foundation of every practitioner. Once the dantian was destroyed, even gods would not be able to save him. Even if he was lucky enough to keep his life, he would no longer be able to mobilize any vital energy and would become a complete cripple. But fortunately, there was the star ink milk. At this moment, the star ink milk that had entered his dantian had just stabilized the dantian that was on the verge of destruction. At the same time, it had also created a unique environment, an excellent environment to condense the strongest nascent soul. At this moment, Lin Yi did not feel the pain brought by the shattering of the gold core. Instead, he had entered a mysterious and wonderful realm. That kind of feeling was as if his body had suddenly become not his own, but had become a bystander with the cold eyes of a bystander. Everything in his body had become clear, and the places that were not so clear before had become clear at a glance because of the star ink milk. The empty realm? Lin Yi's heart was slightly moved. This was a mysterious realm that only existed in legends. He did not expect that he would actually encounter it today. Cultivation was the cultivation of the heart, and it was a process of gradually understanding the principles of the grand Tao of the world. During this process, all cultivators were gradually reacquainting themselves, and introspection was one of the necessary stages. Only by introspection would one be able to understand every single change in one's body like the palm of one's hand, and only then would one be able to truly bring forth one's strongest potential. However, introspection could only be regarded as a basic realm of self-knowledge. One could clearly see every drop of the body. However, it was very difficult to see how to link the body into a whole and how to circulate it freely. If one wanted to achieve this, one could only surpass the realm of introspection and reach the legendary state of emptiness. Legend had it that any practitioner who had reached the empty realm could finally display 100% of their strongest potential and become a legendary master. Lin Yi did not care much about this saying, but one thing was certain. The empty realm was indeed something that could only be encountered by chance. It was not something that could be achieved just because one wanted to. Chapter 45-57. Moreover, the probability was very small. If it was analyzed as a small probability event in the secular world, this kind of thing was equivalent to not existing for ordinary people, and they would not have the chance to encounter it in their lifetime. This was really something that could only be encountered by chance. It was not something that could be encountered by cultivating in seclusion or taking elixirs. If one wanted to reach the empty state, he could only rely on one thing, and that was luck. For Lin Yi, this was purely an unexpected surprise. Lin Yi could not help but secretly guess that this might be related to bathing in the star ink milk. After all, the magical effect of the star ink milk was only known in the world, and it was not even clear. Previously, no one had associated it with the empty state, but it did not mean that there was really no connection between the two. However, Lin Yi did not have much time to be surprised at the moment. The effect of the star ink milk could not last for too long. If he could not successfully condense the nascent soul before its effect faded, the consequences would be unimaginable. The time had come. Lin Yi immediately took a gathering nascent soul golden pill without hesitation. The elixir melted in his mouth, like a refreshing spring flowing from head to toe. There was almost no interval in the middle. The medicinal effect of the gathering nascent soul golden pill immediately took effect. Lin Yi could clearly feel the genuine qi and profound qi in his body slowly condensing, flowing along the major meridians all the way to the dantian. Breaking the golden pill was the first step, gathering the profound qi was the second step, and then the most important third step was condensing the nascent soul. Condensing the nascent soul and condensing the golden pill did not seem to have much difference. The only difference was that the former only needed to break through to the nascent soul stage, while the latter only needed to break through to the gold core stage. But when he really reached this step, Lin Yi knew that the two were fundamentally different. In the end, condensing the golden pill only needed to follow the process. There was not much technical content to speak of. It was just condensing the shape of a golden pill. Even a perfect golden pill was not so complicated. But nascent soul was different, even if everything else was disregarded. It was also extremely difficult to condense a complete nascent soul with profound qi. The golden core was still just a round bead with simple lines, but the nascent soul was a complete human shape. The process of condensing the nascent soul was tantamount to creating a brand new self in the dantian. From head to toe, every part of the body could not be missing. If any part was missing, it would greatly affect the strength of the body in the future. Simply put, the more complete and exquisite the nascent soul condensed when breaking through to the nascent soul stage, the stronger the nascent soul expert would be. On the other hand, If the nascent soul was incomplete, it meant that the nascent soul expert would be at the bottom. Not only would it be difficult for him to break through, but he would also be at the bottom of the pack even among experts of the same level. In order to achieve this, two conditions must be met at the same time. First, it was the perfect environment to condense a nascent soul. Otherwise, if there was even the slightest flaw in such an exquisite work, it would ultimately lead to failure. And the star ink milk just happened to give Linny this unique environment. At the same time, it also gave him a relatively ample amount of time. This was also the origin of the saying that the star ink milk could create the strongest nascent soul. However, this was only an objective external condition. In this world, there was never anything that was absolutely certain. Even taking panacea and panacea might not necessarily work. The star ink milk naturally couldn't guarantee the emergence of the strongest nascent soul stage expert. If one wanted to become the strongest nascent soul, the star ink milk could at most be regarded as an admission ticket. The more critical condition was the second condition, and that was a deep understanding of oneself. As a person from the secular world, Lin Yi naturally had a lot of advantages in this aspect compared to the native cultivators of the Heaven Stage Island. But even so, he still did not have much confidence, because even the modern technology of the secular world had never been able to really see through the human body. Other cultivators could understand more by simply looking inside themselves. Lin Yi's advantage was at most that he had a more scientific concept. However, what Lin Yi did not expect was that he suddenly entered the state of emptiness. Unexpectedly, he suddenly entered the state of emptiness, and all the things that were unclear before suddenly became clear. If he was only 10% or 20% sure about the strongest Yuanying before, then now after entering the state of emptiness, this certainty had increased to at least 60% or 70%. Although it was not 100%, to be able to have 60 or 70% confidence in becoming the strongest nascent soul was already very exaggerated and outrageous in itself. No one would believe it if it was spread out. Even those top experts who had experienced it would not believe it because this kind of thing was simply unimaginable. In their understanding, the strongest nascent soul had always been blessed with luck. Apart from that, everything else, including the star ink milk, could only be auxiliary. At this moment, Lin Yi completely entered a state of selflessness. All of his mind was immersed in his dantian. He used the constantly gathered profound qi to form the nascent soul little by little. At first, it was only a rough outline, but as time passed, this outline slowly became clear. From head to torso to limbs, it gradually took shape. However, when the nascent soul was about to take shape, the molding process stopped abruptly. Lin Yi slightly frowned. Not enough profound qi. The biggest function of the gathering soul golden elixir was to draw out the profound qi hidden in the human body. At the same time, it could also provide profound qi. Under normal circumstances, only one gathering soul golden elixir was enough to condense the nascent soul. Either it succeeded or it failed. There was no third possibility. It was really unprecedented for Lin Yi to suddenly find that he did not have enough profound qi in the middle of molding the nascent soul. There was no other reason. Even if it was a superior nascent soul, it would at most be able to mold some basic organs. However, Lin Yi not only had all the organs big and small, but even the blood vessels and meridians could not be missing. All of these were condensed by profound qi, so it was natural that he did not have enough profound qi. Without any hesitation, Lin Yi hurriedly took the second gathering soul golden elixir. His profound qi once again endlessly replenished his dantian, and Lin Yi once again entered a state of selflessness. The great undertaking of condensing the nascent soul had only just begun. The outline of the nascent soul was relatively easy, but what came after was the truly difficult work. Time passed bit by bit. Lin Yi, who was immersed in the state of selflessness, did not realize how much time had passed. He was not even aware of the changes that had occurred in his body. From beginning to end, all of his attention was focused on condensing the nascent soul. After all, this was the foundation. While Lin Yi was concentrating on condensing the nascent soul, the spirit bird next to him was not idle. It continuously showered its entire body with the star ink milk, not even letting go of a single feather. It was unknown if this made it feel comfortable or if it had some other effect, but in any case, it was never tired. Chapter 45:58. How did your feathers change? Lin Yi's voice came from the side, and his eyes flashed with a never-before-seen charm. If one looked closely, they'd find that he'd changed from head to toe, as if he'd been reborn. His calm and collected temperament had changed a little, becoming extraordinary. There was no doubt that Lin Yi was now a real early-stage nascent soul master. After consuming 2 gathering nascent golden pills and a pool of star ink milk, he finally achieved the strongest nascent soul. Before this, Lin Yi was confident that he could deal with 99% of the late-stage nascent soul masters with his peak gold core strength. Now that he was in the early-stage nascent soul, he could even deal with the peak nascent soul. If it was someone else, even if they achieved the strongest nascent soul, they would only be the strongest of the same level. It was unheard of for an early-stage nascent soul to deal with a peak nascent soul. It was completely a fantasy. However, it had become a reality for Lin Yi. Feeling the earth-shattering changes in his body, Lin Yi did not forget to observe the changes of the spirit bird. During the 10 days when he was condensing his nascent soul, the spirit bird was only soaking in the star ink milk. As a result, it suddenly soared from the late-stage gold core to the peak gold core. This scene was incredible even for Lin Yi. It was not that he had never seen someone who advanced quickly. He himself was a freak, but he had never seen or heard of someone who advanced quickly like the spirit bird. It was already very exaggerated for it to advance from the late-stage gold core to the late-stage gold core in 3 months. Now, it only took 10 days for it to advance from the late-stage gold core to the peak gold core. This kind of thing was simply subversive. Chirp, 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 chirp. The spirit bird excitedly shook its feathers at Lin Yi. Compared to the original color, the feathers were not only brighter, but also a lot longer. However, what made Lin Yi helpless was that this guy splashed his head with the star ink milk. There is one more gathering nascent golden pill. Do you want to try it? Lin Yi suddenly said on a whim. He took out the last gathering nascent golden pill and handed it to the spirit bird. Chirp, chirp. The spirit bird's eyes lit up and immediately swallowed it. Then, it began to flutter in the star ink milk. Hee, you sure aren't being polite with me. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Although it was a whim, and this gathering nascent soul golden pill was enough to cause a bunch of experts to fight for it, but now it was eaten by a spiritual bird. It was really like a child's play. However, he didn't feel that it was a pity. Anyway, he still had a whole nascent ginseng, and the gathering nascent soul golden pill could be refined at any time. Moreover, this spiritual bird was Huang Xiaotao's spiritual pet, which was also his spiritual pet. Seeing the spirit bird fluttering its wings, unable to extricate itself, Lin Yi smiled and walked out of the pit. He sat down cross-legged on the side. He had just entered the early nascent soul stage. Not only did he need to stabilize his cultivation, he also needed to carefully study the martial skills that he had learned. If he couldn't improve them to the appropriate level, then it wouldn't be easy for him to fight with others in the future. For example, Frenzied Flame 1000 Bursts Fist, Frenzied Flame 8 Trigrams Palm, Frenzied Flame 1000 Kicks, etc., as well as super physical skills and extreme physical skills. These were all things that Lin Yi needed to study. In particular, he had to find a way to combine the latter two with other martial skills to create an enhanced version of the Super Butterfly Subtle Steps and Extreme Butterfly Subtle Steps. This would be a powerful means to fight against enemies in the future. In the blink of an eye, another 2 days passed. Lin Yi was in the middle of his research. Suddenly, there was an excited cry of the spirit bird next to him. Then, he saw it jump out of the star ink milk. The feeling it gave off was completely different from before, and there was a trace of illusory feeling. This was a sign that would only appear when the flying spirit beast reached a certain level. You're already in the nascent soul stage? Lin Yi was suddenly stunned, and he couldn't help but grin speechlessly. He really thought that he had leveled up fast enough. However, compared with this spirit bird, it was like a damn snail. How could this damn bird level up so fast? Chirp, 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 chirp. The spirit bird nodded at Lin Yi repeatedly, and its newly increased nascent soul aura was fully revealed. Hee, you don't have to be surprised. It's not only your luck to be able to come to this place, but it's also a great luck for it. It's reasonable for it to be able to have this day. The ghost thing interrupted with a smile. That's within reason? Senior, are you trying to tell me that all spirit beasts level up like this? Lin Yi was speechless. If other spirit beasts leveled up at such a terrifying speed, the spirit beast clan would have been invincible a long time ago. That's not it. There's a reason why this spirit bird can level up so quickly. After all, this place is rich in spiritual energy, which is rare in the world. Although there's the pressure of the 5 elements' murderous aura, most of it is directed at you. The one that is shared with this guy is negligible. It just picks up the remaining non-aggressive spiritual energy and absorbs it, and it can level up quickly. The ghost thing explained. It's that simple? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. He still felt that it was unbelievable. After all, this was too exaggerated. How complicated do you think it is? Don't forget that there's still so much star ink milk and the gathering nascent soul golden pill that you gave it. In addition, this spirit bird's aptitude isn't that great. It's not strange at all for it to reach the nascent soul stage. The ghost thing didn't seem to mind at all. Isn't it strange that its aptitude isn't good? Lin Yi was stunned when he heard this. From the ghost's words, it sounded like the aptitude of the spirit beast was able to level up quickly. What kind of strange argument was this? That's right. If it was any other spirit beast here, especially a spirit beast with a better aptitude, even with this unique environment, it might not be able to level up by a few levels. This is because we spirit beasts are different from you humans. You human cultivators level up faster with better aptitude, but we spirit beasts are the exact opposite. The aptitude of the spirit beast race is higher, so it would need more resources to level up. Naturally, it would take longer for them to level up. As for this spirit bird, its aptitude can only be considered to be below average. Naturally, it would level up much faster. The ghost thing explained with a smile. So that's how it is. This is the first time I've heard of it. Lin Yi suddenly understood. The better the aptitude of the spirit beast, the slower it would level up, but there was no doubt that it was powerful. This was indeed different from human cultivators. When the spirit bird gradually calmed down from the joy of leveling up to the nascent soul stage, Lin Yi immediately jumped on its back and told it to go to the upper level of the 5 poisonous swamp to check on the situation. Now it had been a full 20 days. Lin Yi wanted to know if the 2 people were still stationed there, or if the West Mountain Elder had finally given up. After all, if they wanted to return to the North Island before the deadline, it would really be too late if they didn't leave now. Floating Astronomy, R752. Chapter 45-59. Originally, with the ghostly thing's divine sense, Lin Yi did not even need to go to the surface of the 5 poisoned swamp. He could just stay at the bottom and let the ghostly thing scan him. However, the 5 poisoned swamp's divine sense was too powerful. Ordinary people would be completely isolated, and even the ghostly thing would have to spend a lot of effort to go to the surface of the swamp first. Unlike last time, Lin Yi and the spirit bird were both at the nascent soul stage. This time, it was much easier to reach the surface of the swamp. The ghostly thing connected their divine senses to each other, allowing Lin Yi to clearly perceive everything outside. As expected, there were still 2 people standing guard on a tree branch not far from the 5 poisoned swamp. However, it was not the bald man and the black-faced man from last time. Instead, it was 2 other people. After clearly observing the appearance of the 2 people through the ghostly thing's divine sense, Lin Yi was stunned. This time, it was 2 familiar faces. Brother Yinji, those 2 bastards are too infuriating. There are still 10 days before they change shifts, but in the end, they slipped away so early and forced the 2 of us to take the blame. Originally, it was already bad enough that we had to stay here for 2 months. Now, we have to stay here for another 10 days. This is really infuriating. One of them said angrily. Forget it, old Guan. We have to lower our heads when we are under someone else's eaves. Who asked us to be new to the Dragon Boat Escort Agency? We are not as well established as them. It is inevitable that we will suffer some losses. Just bear with it for now. The other person said with a gloomy face. Sigh. Thinking back to the time when we were at the Equal Heaven escort agency, the two of them were nothing in front of us. If they dared to give me face like this, I will slap them to death. Humph. If it wasn't for this unlucky Ling Yi, we wouldn't have fallen to such a state today. With no other choice, we could only rely on the Dragon Boat escort agency, letting those snobbish bastards ride on our necks and shit on our necks. Therefore, this job is perfect for me. I want to take a good look at the place where Ling Yi's corpse will be destroyed, and I can vent my anger. That's right. It's good that this guy died. With us brothers guarding here, even if he didn't die, we can let old master come and deal with him. Once the jade tablet is broken, he can come at any time. Heh, at that time, we will have made a great contribution. Contribution, my ass. Do you know what kind of place this is? This was the 5 Poison Swamp. Even deities would have to report to the King of Hell if they jumped in. How many lives did Ling Yi have? How could he possibly survive after jumping in? This 5 Poison Swamp was opened by his family? Ha 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 ha. The two people who were talking were actually old acquaintances that Lin Yi had known since he came to the South Continent. They were old acquaintances who had conflicts with each other, Li Yinji and Guan Ziyuan. After committing such a shameless act of treachery, their reputations were completely ruined. Logically speaking, it would be difficult for them to continue working in the escort agency business. However, what Lin Yi didn't expect was that they actually turned around and joined the Dragon Boat escort agency. This Dragon Boat escort agency really didn't take the usual path. They would accept any kind of trash. But thinking about it, they already had an evil cultivator in charge, so they didn't need more trash. Lin Yi clenched his fists, and he wanted to go up and kill these two bastards. However, when he thought of the sensing jade token in their hands, he immediately retracted his killing intent. As the two said just now, once the jade token was broken, they would come at any time. If the West Mountain Old Sect was really attracted, it would not be a good thing for Lin Yi. With Lin Yi's current strength in the early Yuanying stage, although he wouldn't be as embarrassed as before when facing the West Mountain Old Sect, but with his current strength, it was obviously too whimsical to face a giant evil cultivator in the opening stage. The final result could only be to escape into the 5 Poison Swamp as before. However, in that case, the West Mountain Old Sect would personally guard the 5 Poison Swamp and would never give him a chance to escape again. What's more, Lin Yi had only just advanced to the early Yuanying stage, and his strength had not even been consolidated yet. At this time, it was absolutely stupid to go against the West Mountain Old Sect. After thinking about it, Lin Yi returned to the space below. There were still 4 words. The future was long. Lin Yi stood on the high platform again. Because his strength had been qualitatively improved compared to before, the aftermath of the 5 elements murderous chi had no effect on him at all. Only when he was in direct contact with the 5 elements murderous chi, the effect was relatively obvious. With the forcible tempering of the 5 elements murderous chi, Lin Yi soon completely stabilized his strength. However, even so, this kind of day did not last for a few days, because Lin Yi found that the tempering effect of the 5 elements murderous chi was becoming less and less obvious, and the speed of his strength improvement was far less amazing than at the beginning. Lin Yi carefully observed the swamp above his head. Although he had the opportunity to encounter the 5 elements murderous chi standing on the high platform, the density was far less dense than in the middle of the swamp. The probability of encountering it was not very high. It often took more than half an hour to encounter it, and the key was that the strength of the 5 elements murderous chi at the bottom of the swamp was much weaker than that of the 5 elements murderous chi in the middle. The gap between the two could even reach more than 100 times. If he could stand in the middle of the swamp and cultivate, Lin Yi believed that the effect of his cultivation would be as amazing as at the beginning. Unfortunately, this was not realistic. If he wanted to stand in the middle of the swamp, he could only let the spirit bird carry him up. However, in that case, he would have to use his true chi to protect the spirit bird. Otherwise, the spirit bird would definitely die. With Lin Yi's current strength, it was not a problem for him to protect the spirit bird. However, it was pure nonsense to say that he could still protect the spirit bird while cultivating. If he really reached the middle of the swamp, even if he went all out, he might not be able to survive for a moment, not to mention that he would have to sacrifice another spirit bird. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yi finally dispelled the idea of entering the middle of the swamp to cultivate. It was too dangerous to do so, and he could only wait until his strength had increased in the future. As for what to do next, Lin Yi had two choices at the moment. One was to continue to use the 5 elements murderous chi to cultivate on the high platform. Although the effect was not as exaggerated as before, it was still much better than Lin Yi's simple self-cultivation. However, in retrospect, since he entered the underground space, he had been in a state of extreme hard work. His strength had also jumped from the peak of the middle stage of the Gold Core realm to the early stage of the nascent Soul realm. Now that his strength had been stabilized, it was not impossible to continue to cultivate. He believed that it would not take too long for him to advance to the next level, but it was not enough to relax. In the long run, it might not be a good thing. Chapter 4560. He wanted to take this opportunity to wander around in this mysterious and vast space. This place was a perfect treasure trove for him. If he walked around, it was very likely that he would come across some unexpected surprises. However, as he was worried at the beginning, this place may have surprises, but it was more likely that there would only be surprises and no surprises. If he really encountered an unpredictable danger, Lin Yi may not be able to cope with it with his early nascent soul stage strength. After all, if there really was something in this place, no matter how he thought about it, its strength was unlikely to be worse than the West Mountain Old Master. Senior, I plan to look around this place for a while. What do you think? Lin Yi asked the ghost. This wasn't just his problem, and if he were to do things his own way and cause trouble, the ghost would be dragged into it as well. He wouldn't be able to live with that. What's more, in this place, the ghostly thing's perception of unpredictable danger was far stronger than Lin Yi's own. Only with its full help could Lin Yi have the confidence to walk around. Otherwise, it was equivalent to a blind man entering the mountain, no different from courting death. Hee, I know you can't stay here for long. It's really boring to blindly cultivate here. Going too far is as bad as falling short, and it would be a waste of time. It's good to explore a little here. To be honest, I'm really quite interested in this place. The ghostly thing readily agreed. Senior, you can't be thinking of looking for that flood dragon, right? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Although he speculated that the previous eyewitness reports were mostly wrong about the 5 elements of killing intent, this was only speculation after all. After all, there was still a possibility that it existed. The world was so big that nothing was too strange. Things that were previously thought to be impossible often happened in the end. Lin Yi had seen this kind of example many times. Jejia, if there really is a flood dragon here, then it's not a good thing for you and me. You better pray that you don't encounter it, otherwise you'll become food for others. The ghostly thing curled its lips. It can't be, after all, it's a branch of the same race as Senior. It can't be that it doesn't recognize its own kin, right? Lin Yi couldn't help but shrink his neck. Branch of the same race? The ghostly thing suddenly laughed and said disapprovingly, You humans are completely the same race. Didn't they still kill each other? Besides, we spirit beasts adhere to the principle of being more powerful than you humans. If I came here in my peak condition, worm dragons and whatnot would be considered my kind. But in my current state, even if I'm from the same clan, I'll only be treated as food. Well, I hope I'm not that unlucky. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. However, he still called out to the spirit bird and walked towards the unknown area in front of him. At this moment, he was thinking that if he really encountered some terrifying existence, then he could only quickly escape from the 5-poison swamp regardless of the cost. Even if he was chased by the West Mountain Old Sect, it was still better than directly becoming the rations of the spirit beasts. Don't worry, you don't have to worry even if you really encounter that flood dragon. No matter what, I'm still the former Azure Dragon Elder. I don't dare to say much about other things, but at least you can choose whether you want it steamed or braised. I'm sure you'll give me face. The ghostly thing teased. You dragons also know how to cook? You're really not simple. Linny rolled his eyes speechlessly. Carefully guarding against everything in front of him, he began to explore this vast and mysterious underground space for the first time. However, although he said so, Linny's heart was not as nervous as he appeared to be. After all, with the ghostly thing and the jade pendant as a double warning guarantee, no matter what happened, there would always be a little time to react. Moreover, now that the spirit bird's strength had greatly increased, its speed was more than 10 times faster. Although its other talents and potential were not high, the spirit bird's speed was among the top of the flying spirit beasts, absolutely not to be underestimated. Unless it was like the West Mountain Old sect who locked onto it with their divine sense and directly descended, it was really unlikely that an ordinary existence could catch up to it. With such layers of protection, Lin Yi's heart could be said to be nervous and confident. One man and one bird gradually explored in this mysterious and vast space. However, after walking for a whole 2 days, from beginning to end, they did not encounter any living creatures at all. Not to mention terrifying existences like the flood dragon, they did not even see a single insect. The richness of the spiritual energy in this space was rare in the world. If it was any other place, it would be a gathering of spirit beasts, and heavenly treasures could be seen everywhere. However, because of the 5-poison swamp, this place unexpectedly became a deadland. There were no spirit beasts, no wild beasts, not even a plant. After exploring for a whole 2 days, Lin Yi saw the same scene from beginning to end. Other than the towering stone pillars and high platforms everywhere, this place was simply an uninhabited desert. It was empty and there was nothing. Faced with this result, Lin Yi could not help but sigh in relief, but he could not help but feel a little disappointed. Although he was not a greedy person, this place was, after all, a treasure land made in heaven for him. Originally, he more or less thought that there would be some unexpected gains, otherwise, he would not have taken the risk to explore. But looking at the current situation, there was no gain at all. At most, he could only comfort himself that there was no danger. Since it was clearly an uninhabited desert, should he continue to explore? Linny couldn't help but hesitate. He didn't want to do something that was obviously a waste of time, but he couldn't just give up like this. Although he had seen the same wasteland for the past 2 days, who knew if the other places were the same? What if it wasn't? I will explore for another day. If it is still like this, then forget it. It is better to save time and cultivate. Linny finally made up his mind. If he did not see any changes after 3 days, then there was no point in continuing to explore. Even if there was really a hidden opportunity here, it could only be said that fate was not in his hands. Nothing could be forced, and there was nothing he could do about it. After saying that, Lin Yi jumped onto the back of the spirit bird. For the past 2 days, he had been walking on the ground out of caution, but now he had a general idea of this space. Moreover, he only planned to explore for 1 more day. Lin Yi did not intend to dawdle on the ground anymore. With the spirit bird's speed in the air, the area that they could explore in 1 day was hundreds or thousands of times more than before. If there was really something in this space, Linny believed that 1 day was enough. Chapter 45-61. Of course, even so, the speed of the spirit bird was not that slow. After all, even if it only used 10% of its speed, it was already much faster than when it went all out. In less than half an hour, the human and the bird had explored a much larger area than the previous 2 days combined. Stop, there seems to be something in front, the ghost thing suddenly said. Really? Linny was shocked and hurriedly stopped the spirit bird. He was nervous and excited. After being silent and bored for more than 2 days, the fear at the beginning had long been replaced by excitement. Now, he could not wait to encounter something. Of course it's true, but it's too far away now. Even with my divine sense, I can only vaguely sense the existence of something, and I'm sure it's alive. However, I don't know whether it's a spirit beast or a human cultivator. The ghost thing muttered. Why is there a human cultivator in this place? Lin Yi was stunned. Subconsciously, if there was something in this place, it must be a spirit beast, such as the dragon mentioned before. Why would a human cultivator appear here inexplicably? Hey, what right do you have to say that? Aren't you a living human cultivator yourself? The ghost thing snorted and curled its lips. Although I said that a freak like you who has all 5 elements is hard to find in this world, there's always someone better than you. It's not surprising to see 1 or 2 of you. Well, it's not impossible. Then, Senior, quickly check carefully. Is it a spirit beast or a human cultivator? Linny could only pinch his nose and smile bitterly. That's easy. Let the spirit bird move a little closer, but not too close. It's best if I can detect it, and it can't detect me, the ghost thing instructed. It was very confident in its divine sense. Even if the other party was really a dragon, it could not detect further than him. Therefore, as long as he controlled the distance, it was not difficult to achieve this. Okay. Lin immediately let the spirit bird move forward, but this time, it was much slower. He was practically inching forward bit by bit. Otherwise, if he inched too much, he might be noticed by the other party. This went on for a while. Lin and the spirit bird, who weren't too nervous at first, were startled by this strange atmosphere. It didn't matter if it was humans or spirit beasts, they were afraid of the unknown. If it was a dragon in front of them, they wouldn't be so nervous. After a while, the ghostly thing suddenly made a sound of surprise. Lin Yi's nerves tightened and he quickly asked, "What's wrong? It's really strange. Why does this aura feel so familiar?" The ghostly thing muttered in surprise. Familiar? Could it really be that flood dragon? Lin couldn't help but speculate. In his opinion, the only aura that could make the ghost feel familiar was the flood dragon. Previously, he thought that the so-called eyewitness reports were just people misreading the 5 elements' murderous aura, but he didn't expect it to be true. Not sure. The ghostly thing paused for a moment and said, "This feeling shouldn't be as simple as being of the same race. However, I can be sure that the other party is of the dragon race, but whether it is a flood dragon or not, I don't know." "How can it be?" "Senior, you should be able to see it clearly with your divine sense, right?" Linny asked curiously. In theory, the things that divine sense could perceive were much clearer than the normal 5 senses, so it was normal that others couldn't see it. However, whether the other party was a flood dragon or not should be known at a glance. "Kid, you think too easily. Previously, when West Mountain Old Sect Master was chasing you, I could block his divine sense. On the other hand, other existences naturally have a way to block my divine sense perception. It's just that the difficulty is extremely high, and it's not that easy." The ghostly thing smiled bitterly. "In that case, Senior, your divine sense has been blocked by it. Could it be that it has already noticed?" Linny was suddenly shocked. It was not good news to be discovered before he could figure out the other party's details. "Not really. However, after reaching a certain level, whether it is you human cultivators or us spirit beasts, we will habitually release a divine sense protective cover. In this way, it can prevent other people's divine sense from peeping. If this divine sense protective cover is high enough, even with my ability, it will be difficult to penetrate it from a long distance. At most, I can only sense the general aura, but it is difficult to know the specific situation inside unless I directly break the other party's divine sense protective cover. However, this will alert the enemy." The ghostly thing gave Linny some common sense. "So that's how it is. Then what should we do now?" Linny asked. Listening to the ghostly thing's tone, he knew that the other party was definitely not a simple character. Maybe it was a top-level spirit beast. Provoking such an existence in this place was definitely asking for trouble. It was very likely that he would not even be able to escape. "Kid, if you have the courage, then continue forward. I am quite interested in this guy, but I have to say the ugly words first. Even if this guy is of the same kind as the Dragon Clan, it is difficult to say whether it will by my account or not. I may not be able to protect you, so you have to think carefully before you speak. To be safe, we will directly turn back the way we came. In any case, it can't detect us now." The ghostly thing said calmly, leaving the choice to Lin E. Curiosity not only killed the cat, but it also killed people. It was impossible for Lin E not to understand this principle. After thinking for a moment, he decided, let's continue forward and see. If I don't find out what the other party is, I can't continue to stay in this place with peace of mind. After all, the most important thing in cultivation is to be impatient. If I don't solve this problem, I will have to give up this rare cultivation treasure land. So, no matter what, I have to try. Tisk tsk, it's good that you have this awareness. I thought you would be a tortoise hiding in its shell. Oh no, it should be an ostrich that buries its head in the sand. The ghostly thing laughed. Ostrich. Lin Yi was instantly speechless. He could not help but secretly criticize the ghostly thing in his heart. This guy went to the secular world, but he did not find the bloodline of the king of spirit beasts. Instead, he learned a bunch of new words. Even in this state, he still has the mood to learn these things. As expected, his mind is strong even if he is disabled. After making his decision, Lin Yi immediately continued forward with the spirit bird at the same slow speed as before. Although he had already made up his mind to find out what the other party was, the ideal situation was to not let the other party detect them first. After all, this was the only way to ensure his safety. Chapter 4562. That's great. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi's spirit was lifted. Now, he only wanted to figure out who the other party was, so that he could finally decide whether to leave or stay. The man and the bird continued to slowly move forward for a while, their palms sweating from nervousness. Only when the ghostly thing's voice sounded again did they finally breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, this distance is enough. I'll start to crack the other party's divine sense shield. A little bit of time is enough. Okay. Lin Yi quickly stopped moving. This kind of pressure of not knowing what the other party was, but being forced to move closer and closer was really not something that an ordinary person could bear, especially in this empty underground environment. If it were someone with a slightly weaker mental quality, they would probably directly collapse. Lin Yi could clearly feel a wave of divine sense radiating from the top of his head. Although the five poison swamp had a very strong restriction on divine sense, even in this space, with Lin Yi's current strength, it was very difficult to freely use divine sense, and his perception ability was countless times weaker than on the ground. However, the ghostly thing was on him. Even if he could not feel it normally, when the divine sense was strong, he could still feel it. It was a completely subconscious movement. Originally, Lin Yi's divine sense was inexplicably trapped in this empty space, but along with the divine sense of the ghostly thing, it unexpectedly passed through his body. This was something that had never happened before. What was even more outrageous was that Lin Yi's divine sense did not stop there. Instead, using the ghostly thing's divine sense as a bridge, it crossed a distance of dozens of miles, all the way to the other party's body. The ghostly thing was a little stunned. Even it had encountered this kind of thing for the first time, but then it laughed. A little interesting. This kid really can't be measured by common sense. It seems that not only is his talent in the 5 elements and 7 attributes amazing, but even his divine sense is also a freak. This is a rare seedling. It seems that I'll be very busy in the future. After the ghostly thing reacted, it did not stop Lin Yi. After all, for Lin Yi, this was a subconscious awakening of divine sense. Although he had not yet reached the threshold of systematic divine sense cultivation, this kind of spontaneous preschool education opportunity could be encountered but not sought. It could be said to be greatly beneficial to the cultivation of divine sense in the future. Naturally, the ghostly thing would not stop him. This feeling is indeed a little familiar. But that doesn't make sense. Apart from you, Senior, I haven't come into contact with any other dragons. Lin Yi suddenly exclaimed. He himself was completely unaware of this. He thought that the ghost had connected their divine senses and deliberately let him see who the other party was. It's okay. As long as I break its divine sense barrier, I'll know everything I need to know, the ghostly thing said, and then began to sink its mind, trying to penetrate the opponent's divine sense barrier. Lin Yi was about to nod his head, but before the ghostly thing could finish speaking, a deafening roar suddenly came from dozens of miles ahead. Immediately, the target that had been locked on by the divine sense flew towards Lin Yi at a rapid speed. Its speed was so fast that it made one's scalp tingle, Although Linny had not seen the spiritual bird's extreme speed, his intuition told him that the other party's speed could easily kill the spiritual bird. Could it have sensed it? He suddenly felt nervous. He had never thought that such a situation would occur. The other party could actually detect him, who was also protected by divine sense, before the ghostly thing could break its divine sense barrier. Didn't this mean that the other party's divine sense foundation was weaker than the ghostly thing's? That's definitely not too far off. What kind of F***king level is this existence? Of course, isn't it obvious? The ghostly thing smiled bitterly. Originally, it was confident that no one would notice it. Who knew that Lin Yi's divine sense would also come to join in the fun? If the other party's divine sense barrier was compared to a door, the ghostly thing should have used a master key to quietly enter. However, because of Lin Yi's interference, it forcibly broke through the door. It would be strange if the other party could not even detect it. However, the ghostly thing could not do anything. Although it would take a lot of risk to be discovered by the other party, in comparison, it was more important not to disturb Lin Yi's divine sense awakening. In its opinion, as long as Lin Yi was unwilling to give up this cultivation treasure land, he would have to deal with the other party sooner or later anyway. It was not a big deal to be discovered. What will come sooner or later. Let's take a good look at this guy's Lushan Mountain. Lin Yi quickly calmed down, and his whole body surged with fighting spirit. Since entering here, he had not had a chance to fight. Now was the right time to test how strong he was as an early nascent soul stage cultivator. Even if he knew that he was no match for the ghostly thing, he would do his best to find out where his limits were. Your courage is not bad, but I think your fighting spirit is a bit of a waste. The ghostly thing suddenly laughed, and its originally somewhat nervous tone also became relaxed. Huh, what do you mean? Lin Yi looked puzzled. Before he could figure out what was going on, his divine sense had automatically retracted into his body. So unless the other party entered his line of sight, he would not be able to see the other party's face no matter how close they were. Kid, didn't you also feel that the other party's aura is a bit familiar and strange? Let me tell you, this guy is indeed an old friend. Your old friend? The ghostly thing laughed. My old friend? Lin Yi immediately became even more confused. He did not know many spirit beasts, and even the number of spirit beasts in the secular world and the heavenly stage island could be counted on one hand. Previously, he had encountered the great fire lion and the big spider in the Audwa cultivation city ruins. Could it be them again this time? No way. Roar, roar, roar. While Lin Yi was in a daze, the other party had already arrived in front of him with a loud roar. At this distance, he did not even need to use his divine sense to sense it, and could even see it clearly with his naked eye. Its entire body exuded a terrifying murderous aura that was close to materialization, causing one to be unable to breathe. It was estimated to be at least 10 meters long, with 4 thick and sturdy claws, a long tail full of sharpness, a pair of huge wings on both sides of its back, and a row of extremely hard and sharp sword-like spikes in the center. It was a ghastly sight. It was simply like a dinosaur that walked out of the Jurassic period. 5 Evils Dragon? How come it's you? Lin Yi blurted out in shock. He never would have thought that he'd meet this old friend of his from the common world here. It's actually you, a human cultivator? The 5 Evils Dragon also recognized Lin Yi at once. It seemed to be surprised and happy, and the baleful aura and killing intent on its body immediately dissipated. It had thought that some powerful enemy had come to attack, but it did not expect it to be such an old friend. Chapter 45-63. Lin Yi and the Dragon of 5 Evils were not old friends. It would be more accurate to say that they were enemies. However, coming to Heaven Island from the mortal world was like meeting an old friend from 1,000 miles away. Even if they were not old friends, they were now. This could be seen from the Dragon of 5 Evils' happy expression. Whoosh, roar. You human cultivators can come here, so can I. However, I did not expect you to come to a place like this, and you are already a nascent soul cultivator. You are not simple. The Dragon of 5 Evils could not hide its surprise. Lin Yi's body was full of battle intent, and he did not hide his strength at all. Naturally, he could tell at a glance. Yes, I also did not expect to meet you in a place like this. The things in this world are really unexpected. Lin Yi laughed. Ho ho, don't you humans have a saying, enemies don't meet unless they're enemies? To be honest, if I were to meet you like this under normal circumstances, I wouldn't be so friendly even if I didn't beat you to death on the spot. I still remember how you ruined my plans. The dragon of 5 evils made a very human-like expression. It was a strange expression on a dinosaur's face. Oh, what about now? Lin Yi asked with interest. Now? Sigh. The dragon of 5 evils let out a long sigh and almost spat at Lin Yi. It sighed and said, I am too lonely in this place. Don't mention a living creature. I can't even see a single plant. It is all barren, and I cannot see the sun. If it were you impetuous humans, you would have gone crazy long ago. However, I do not dare to go out. It is rare for me to see someone, and it is an old acquaintance from the mortal world. Of course, I am happy. So, don't worry, I will not harm you. Haha, that is good. To be honest, I entered this place by chance and am trapped here. But why can't you go out? Could it be that you cannot withstand the pressure of this swamp? The killing intent of the 5 elements should have no effect on you, right? Lin Yi asked curiously. He knew that the dragon of 5 evils was the same as him. It also had the 5 elements. In theory, it should be able to withstand the killing intent of the 5 elements. Roar. Do you think this swamp can trap me? The dragon of 5 evils immediately laughed out loud. It did not directly answer Lin Yi's question. Instead, it suddenly opened the pair of huge wings on its back. With a gentle flap, its huge body instantly soared into the sky. Lin Yi's eyelids twitched when he saw this. Even at such a close distance, he was unable to sense any powerful airflow. However, the dragon of 5 evils was able to reach a speed so fast that it was difficult for the naked eye to capture it. This was enough to prove that the dragon of 5 evils had reached the point of perfection in its control. If it were to unleash its full power, its speed would be far greater than before. Even the spirit bird would not be able to catch up to it. It was too terrifying. Lin Yi could not help but feel a little absent-minded. As far as he knew, the 5 evils dragon was not a spiritual beast that was known for its speed. Now that it had suddenly displayed such a shocking skill, it was truly inconceivable. However, this was nothing. The speed displayed by the dragon of 5 evils only caused Lin Yi to be absent-minded. However, what it did next in the 5 poison swamp caused even someone as calm as Lin Yi's jaw to drop. He was unable to say anything for a long time. Strictly speaking, the dragon of 5 evils did not do anything special after jumping into the 5 poison swamp above its head. It only leisurely swam around the 5 poison swamp. This in itself was not strange. After all, like Lin Yi, it possessed all 5 elements. The 5 elemental killing intent would not attack Lin Yi's body, which was protected by his qi. Naturally, it would not attack the dragon of 5 evils either. However, what caused Lin Yi to be dumbfounded was that when the dragon of 5 evils suddenly released the powerful aura hidden within its body, the 5 elemental killing intent that was constantly roaming around its body suddenly scattered in all directions. The 5 poison swamp was the territory of the 5 elemental killing intent. However, at this moment, where the dragon of 5 evils was, there was not a single trace of the 5 elemental killing intent within a radius of several miles. All of the 5 elemental killing intent had fled on their own. The 5 elemental killing intent was not a living thing. It did not have any thoughts or consciousness. However, even if it was just a pure killing intent, after condensing to such a degree, it would inevitably develop a trace of intelligence. Therefore, when faced with an existence that was far above it, it would take the initiative to flee. However, the strongest of the 5 elemental killing intents gave Lin Yi a pressure that was no weaker than that of the spirit beast guards that he had seen earlier. How could such a terrifying existence be frightened to such an extent by the dragon of 5 evils? Feeling the huge pressure that was emitted from the 5 poison swamp layer above his head, the overwhelming feeling of a fiend god descending on earth, immediately shocked Lin Yi. Although he was far from such a level, he could at least see that the current Dragon of Five Evils was definitely far above the mountain opening period. The West Mountain Elder, who was known as the Mountain Opening Period Evil Cultivator, was simply insignificant in front of the Dragon of Five Evils. Even the three giants of the Morning Star Academy in the East Continent that Lin Yi had seen before were far inferior to it. They were not on the same level at all. What kind of strength is this? Lin Yi swallowed his saliva with difficulty and looked at the Dragon of Five Evils above his head with a face full of shock. Earth Opening Period. The ghostly thing pretended to be indifferent as it explained. However, at this moment, even its tone carried a rare hint of shock that was difficult to conceal. The Dragon of Five Evils in front of it was completely different from the one that he had seen in the secular world. If it had not been confirmed just now, the ghostly thing would definitely not have equated the two of them. It would only have thought that it had seen the ancestor of the Dragon of Five Evils in the secular world. After all, the difference in strength between them was more than 108,000 miles. How long had it been? It had not even been 2 years. The fact that Lin Yi could grow from the initial foundation establishment stage to the current original infant stage was already very exaggerated and shocking in itself. However, the Dragon of Five Evils had unexpectedly become an existence of the Earth Opening Period. In front of it, Lin Yi could not even be counted as a small sorcerer in the presence of a great sorcerer. Had the world gone crazy? Earth Opening Period? Lin Yi was momentarily confused. Although it was the first time he had heard of this term, he could tell that it was not a trivial matter just by hearing the name. The realm above the mountain opening period is the Earth Opening Period. Those who can reach this level are considered to have great magical powers. The ghostly thing explained lightly. Upon hearing this, Lin Yi suddenly understood. The Dragon of Five Evils was indeed in existence above the mountain opening period. This trip to the South Continent was really not in vain. Even if he did not mention the various fortuitous encounters and the sharp increase in strength, his horizons were much broader than before. Chapter 45-64. While they were talking, the Dragon of Five Evils suddenly descended from the sky. It was so fast that Lin Yi was shocked. The Dragon of Five Evils stared at Lin Yi and said in surprise, "Roar, another old acquaintance?" Although the ghostly thing and Lin Yi were communicating through divine sense, they did not deliberately shield their divine sense fluctuations. It was not surprising that the Dragon of Five Evils sensed it. After all, it had seen the ghostly thing in the secular world, so it had a deep impression of its divine sense. When it saw the ghostly thing in the secular world, it was so scared that it trembled as if it was treading on thin ice. However, it was now at the Earth opening stage. After sensing the ghostly thing's existence, although it was a little surprised, it was not as fearful as before. After all, it was now at a very high level. No matter how terrifying and powerful the existence was, it would at most be afraid of it, but it would not be in awe. "Not bad, you've made a lot of progress in the past 2 years. The ghostly thing laughed and suddenly appeared next to Lin Yi. Of course, it was still a cloud of black fog. They had crossed paths in the secular world before, and the Dragon of Five Evils was also a member of the Dragon Clan to him. Now that the Dragon of Five Evils had made it clear that it was not hostile to him, there was no harm in revealing itself. After all, although the Dragon of Five Evils was a spiritual beast with high spiritual intelligence, it was simple and honest in nature. It did not hold back its evil intentions like human cultivators. The Dragon of Five Evils stared at the black fog in front of it and could not help but be surprised. You are in the form of a primordial spirit, and you have the aura of our Dragon Clan." Although it had met the ghostly thing in the secular world, it did not show itself directly at that time. It only felt the overwhelming pressure of the ghostly thing, and did not know that the ghostly thing was only an incomplete primordial spirit. "I am a Dragon Clan. Speaking of this, why do I feel that your aura is a little different from before? Why does it seem to have the aura of a flood dragon? And how did your strength suddenly increase so much?" The ghostly thing was also puzzled. It did not feel this way before when it was far away, but now it was close at hand. He could clearly sense the slight change in the other party's aura. Even though he had never seen a flood dragon before, all dragons were originally one. So he naturally knew that this slight change was actually the aura of a flood dragon. It's a long story. The Pinta fiendish dragon was hesitant to reveal the inside story. However, after a moment's thought, he said, "Forget it. I don't have anything to do anyway. Both of you came from the secular world, so you probably don't know much about this world. I'll just tell you about it." Complain? When Lenny heard this, a strange expression appeared on his face. The Five Evils dragon was a ferocious and terrifying super-spiritual beast. Moreover, it was a high and mighty existence of the earth-opening realm. Now, it said that it wanted to complain to him and the ghost. This kind of thing was really strange. This five-poison swamp was originally the territory of a flood dragon. Its name was the Five-Poison Flood Dragon. The Five Fiends dragon said slowly, "What? There's really a flood dragon?" The ghost could not help but be surprised. It had previously spent a lot of effort to investigate this place, but in the end, it did not find anything suspicious. Especially after seeing the flood dragon's 5 elements murderous chi, it thought that the previous eyewitness reports had mistaken the 5 elements murderous chi. It did not expect that this matter was actually true. Of course it's true. When I first came up from the secular world, I was directly transported to this 5-poison swamp. At first, I also thought that there were no spiritual beasts in this place. I did not expect that a powerful clan like the 5-Poison Flood Dragon was entrenched here. The 5 Fiends dragon said, "You were transported here from the beginning? Could it be that all spirit beasts were teleported to this place? Isn't that very dangerous?" Lenny could not help but be surprised. Apart from him and the Dragon of 5 Evils, this place was a place of certain death for the other spirit beasts. Any one of the 5 elemental killing intents could easily take their lives. Furthermore, there were countless 5 elemental killing intents gathered in this place. Even the most powerful of existences would not be able to withstand it. That's not it. The fact that it was transported here should be due to its attribute. If it did not possess all 5 elements, it would not have been transported here, the ghost explained. That seems to be the case. In any case, I was the only one transported here. I was caught off guard and fell from the 5-poison swamp to this place. However, even though my strength was low at the time, I did not suffer any injuries. The 5 Fiends dragon looked at the ghost and was slightly surprised that it knew so much. However, it did not ask any questions and continued, "After I descended, I encountered the 5-Poison Flood Dragon here. Seeing that I was from the same clan, not only did it not harm me, but it also took me in as a disciple and brought me along to cultivate." In that case, your luck is quite good. Lenny could not help but sigh when he heard this. According to what the ghostly thing had said before, even the dragon clan might not necessarily be so friendly with each other. If their strength was about the same, they might mind their own business. However, if there was a huge disparity in strength, then the weak would very likely become food for the strong. The law of the jungle had always been the law of the jungle. Who would have thought that this 5 Venoms Flood Dragon would treat the 5 Venoms Dragon differently? It had to be said that the 5 Venoms Dragon was extremely lucky. It's not just luck. I can more or less guess what the 5 Poison Flood Dragon is thinking. The ghost laughed and speculated. Our dragon clan has always been small. Even if we are not friendly with each other, under normal circumstances, we will not kill each other without any scruples like the other spirit beasts. Moreover, there are only a few dragon clan that can safely enter the 5 Poison Swamp. Aside from the 5 Poison Flood Dragon, the 5 Poison Flood Dragon might be the only one that can do so. Therefore, the 5 Poison Flood Dragon must be eager to hunt. If it does not take the 5 Poison Flood Dragon as a disciple, it is very likely that it will never have a disciple in its lifetime. That's right. My master said the same thing. Moreover, it has cultivated here alone for many years. It is rare for me to talk to it, so how could it kill me? Roar. As the 5 Poison Flood Dragon spoke, it looked at the ghost in surprise. Why does it feel like this guy knows everything like the back of its hand? Who is it? What happened after that? That's right. Why don't I see your master here? Could it be that he went out to do something? Linny continued to ask. He had actually stayed here for a long time. However, he had not seen either the 5-poison flood dragon or the 5-poison flood dragon. It could only be said that the underground space was not small. If he had not searched around on the spirit bird, he would have thought that there was no one here. Chapter 45-65. Dead? Both Lin Yi and the ghost were shocked at the same time. Even the 5-Bane dragon was at Earth opening level, and the 5-Poison Jiao dragon, as its master, had to be even stronger. A super spirit beast of that level couldn't even die easily, let alone be killed by a human. How did it die so suddenly? One day, there was a special sound transmission from the spirit beasts in the sky above the entire South Island, saying that Elder Azure Dragon had been missing for several years, and there had been no news of him until now. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Now that the new king of spirit beasts had succeeded the throne, the position of Elder Azure Dragon, as his right-hand man, naturally couldn't be left vacant. Therefore, the king decided to hold an open selection for the new Elder Azure Dragon. There was a minimum requirement for registration, and that is, the strength of the dragon clan must be above the sea-splitting stage. The dragon of 5 evils said from the beginning. The sea-splitting stage? Lin Yi was stunned. Another new stage that he did not understand. Above the earth opening stage is the sea-splitting stage. If you want to become a top-notch elder of the Spirit Beast clan, the sea-splitting stage is the basic requirement. Otherwise, you won't be able to subdue so many arrogant and powerful spirit beasts. Even the prestige of the dragon clan won't be enough. Even the spirit beasts of your own clan may not be able to subdue them, let alone other clans, the ghostly thing explained. I see. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. He had been guessing what the ghost was at its peak. From the mysterious ascending stage to the mountain opening stage, and then the earth opening stage, he had guessed almost all of them. But now, he had a general idea. It should be the sea-splitting stage, or even higher. It was terrifying just thinking about it. So, your master, the 5-Poison Jiao Dragon, is going to participate in the selection for the new Elder Azure Dragon? The ghost turned to the dragon of 5 evils and asked. Yes, my master is qualified. Although he doesn't show himself, he is not completely pure. He still has some ambitions. This time, he has a chance to become the new Elder Azure Dragon. Of course, he won't let it go. Besides, with his strength, he has a high chance of winning. If nothing goes wrong, this position will be his. The dragon of 5 evils said, although I've never seen this 5 poisons flood dragon before, with its powerful talents of all 5 elements, ordinary spirit beasts would find it difficult to defeat it. Even if it were of the same level, it would have a higher chance of winning, the ghostly thing commented. Linny nodded. Since even that ghostly thing had such an evaluation, it meant that this 5-poison flood dragon indeed had the strength to challenge the new Azure Dragon Elder. He couldn't help but ask, what happened after that? Could it be that there's a dragon spirit beast that's more powerful than your master among the participants? No. The dragon of 5 evils shook its head decisively. No? Were you there during the selection? Lin Yi was puzzled. I wasn't there. With my strength back then, I could easily become food for other spirit beasts if I went out. Not to mention, at the sea-splitting stage, I've already reached the acme of perfection. If I didn't have enough strength, I wouldn't have been able to see anything. Instead, I would have been easily killed by the aftermath. That's why my master didn't bring me along during the selection. The dragon of 5 evils shook its head. Then why did your master? Linny didn't finish the sentence. If the 5-poison serpent was really that strong, and yet it didn't become the new green dragon elder and died instead, there had to be a lot more to it. My master told me this after he escaped. He was full of confidence when he went to compete for the position of the new Azure Dragon Elder. However, he didn't expect that the Vermilion Bird Elder who was in charge of this matter had already chosen a candidate. The so-called open selection was just a formality. It was a pity that although the candidates they had selected were also very strong, in the end, my master, who had appeared out of nowhere, was a cut above them. Seeing that the situation had spiraled out of control, After the situation went out of control, the vermilion bird elder secretly poisoned my master. As a result, my master was caught off guard and was seriously injured. He desperately escaped back to the five-poison swamp. The dragon of five evils said through gritted teeth. Oh, since he was able to escape back here, even the vermilion bird elder should be helpless against him. How did he die? The ghostly thing suddenly asked. The five-poison swamp could only be entered by spirit beasts or human cultivators who possessed all five elements. So far, there were only three ghostly things that could enter. They were the five-poison flood dragon, the dragon of five evils, and Lin Yi. Apart from them, no matter how strong they were, they couldn't enter. Not to mention the vermilion bird, even if it was at its peak, it wouldn't be able to do anything. Therefore, this was a natural shelter. In theory, as long as it could escape back, it would be absolutely safe. No matter how strong the vermilion bird elder was, it wouldn't be able to do anything. Although my master barely managed to escape, he was already seriously injured and was on the verge of death. He couldn't rely on himself to heal himself. However, the vermilion bird elder had sent people to guard the swamp, so it wasn't realistic for him to find someone to help him escape. In the end, he could only accept his fate and forcefully pass on his powerful strength to me. That's why my strength increased so quickly. Unfortunately, my master's injuries were too serious. At that time, I hadn't received all of the inheritance when he was already on the verge of death. When the dragon of five evils said this, the majestic earth opening stage super-existence couldn't stop its eyes from turning red. Although it was a ferocious and powerful spirit beast, it was far more affectionate than an ordinary human. The five-poison flood dragon was not only its master, but also its loving father. It was the only warmth it had felt since arriving at the Heaven Stage Island, especially when it had passed on all of its strength to it. Even its own son couldn't do anything. Men didn't easily shed tears, and the five-poison flood dragon had never known what tears were. However, the death of the five-poison flood dragon made it taste tears for the first time in its life. Lenny couldn't help but be speechless when he saw this. He didn't expect the five-poison flood dragon to die because of this. He then subconsciously glanced at the ghost east and thought to himself, although the five-poison flood dragon was strong, if they were to really compare, it was likely that the ghost, the former azure dragon, was stronger. If the five-poison flood dragon had been replaced with the ghost, it would have been able to escape to the five-poison swamp in the form of a primordial spirit. In the future, there would have been a chance for it to make a comeback. Of course, this kind of heaven-defying ability was probably unique in the world. After all, the primordial spirit was attached to the physical body. Once the physical body died, no matter how strong the primordial spirit was, it would become water without a source or a tree without roots. In the end, it could only gradually wither away and could not continue to exist like this ghostly thing. Chapter 4566. The baleful aura on its body poured out without restraint, causing the entire five-poison swamp to churn violently. As for Lin Yi, who was very close to it, he almost suffered internal injuries. Fortunately, his strength had risen sharply recently. Otherwise, if he had been accidentally killed by the agitated five-poisons dragon, he would not have been able to die in peace. That bastard vermilion bird actually dared to do such a thing. This is intolerable. Once I recover my strength, I'll definitely be the first to tear it apart. The ghostly being was also fuming with rage. As the former azure dragon, it could be said to be the undisputed leader of the dragon tribe. Now that it heard that an important member of the dragon tribe, the five-poison serpent, had been killed by the vermilion bird, it wanted nothing more than to fight the vermilion bird to the death. The dragon of five evils was still immersed in grief and rage. When it heard the ghostly thing's words, it suddenly froze. It looked at the ghostly thing with an inquisitive gaze. It had been wondering about the ghostly thing's identity from the very beginning. From the way it spoke, it seemed like it could even deal with the vermilion bird at its peak. Five Evils kid, do you know who I am? The ghostly thing suddenly asked the Five Evils dragon. Aren't Aren't you just a primordial spirit from the mortal world? The Five Fiends dragon could not help but ask in surprise. A primordial spirit from the mortal world? Humph. Do you think a place with such thin spiritual chi in the secular world would have a single primordial spirit appear out of nowhere? The ghostly thing curled its lips and snorted before revealing its identity. To tell you the truth, I am the Azure Dragon Elder who has been missing for many years. Ah, you're Elder Azure Dragon? How is this possible? Then how did you end up like this? The Dragon of Five Evils was extremely shocked upon hearing this. Even its master, the Five-Poison Flood Dragon, was unable to become an Elder of the Azure Dragon in the end. Although there was a reason for this, it felt that the previous Azure Dragon had to have been an extremely terrifying top-notch spirit beast. How could he only have a broken primordial spirit? I can't explain it in one or two sentences, so let's put it simply. I only ended up like this because I wanted to go to the secular world. I can only struggle at death's door. Otherwise, I wouldn't have allowed that bastard vermilion bird to act so unscrupulously. The ghostly thing smiled bitterly. The Dragon of Five Evils was completely stunned. A pair of huge eyes were filled with disbelief as they sized up the ghostly thing from head to toe. But the inside information was enough for it to digest for a while. After a moment of silence, the Dragon of Five Evils suddenly prostrated on the ground and bowed respectfully to the ghostly thing in the unique way of the Dragon clan. The Dragon of Five Evils pays respect to Senior Azure Dragon. If it was someone else, the Dragon of Five Evils wouldn't have believed them so easily. However, it had interacted with them in the mortal world before, and it also sensed the aura of a senior from the same clan from this ghostly thing. Previously, when they were in the secular world, due to their low cultivation, the Five Malice Dragons only knew that the other party was far stronger than them. Apart from that, it was completely clueless about everything else. However, this time, it was already at the Earth opening stage. At such a close distance, it could clearly feel the faint ancient aura of the Dragon clan on the ghostly thing. Even when it was angry just now, even it was trembling. There was only one explanation for this. Even if the ghostly thing in front of it was not the Azure Dragon Elder, it must be an experienced senior of the Dragon clan. Since it was a senior of the Dragon clan, the ghostly thing's words were naturally trustworthy. But then again, there was no need for the ghostly thing to lie to it. After all, it was meaningless. The Dragon of Five Evils wouldn't really obey the other party just because it was the former Azure Dragon Elder. At most, it would be more respectful. Get up. I'm no longer the Azure Dragon Elder. If you call me Senior Azure Dragon, people will think that you're an accomplice of that bastard vermilion bird. The ghostly thing sighed and laughed. You should call me Senior Ghost like Lenny does? Yes, Senior Ghost. The Dragon of Five Evils quickly changed its address. Then, it looked at Lenny and couldn't help but ask, I was wondering why you guys came to this place. I'm a spirit beast with 5 elements. It's understandable that I was teleported to this 5-poison swamp, but how did a human cultivator like you end up here? Could it be that you're not a human, but a spirit beast in disguise? Listening to the Dragon of Five Evils' wild speculation, Lin Yi, who was initially speechless, was immediately amused. He said speechlessly, You're at the Earth opening stage now. Can't you tell if I'm a human or a spirit beast? Originally, I could tell, but isn't there a senior ghost? Maybe he used some special method to make people completely unable to tell that you're a spirit beast? The Dragon of Five Evils shook its big head. Although it was only a broken primordial spirit, it was still very trusting of the ghostly thing, the former Azure Dragon. All right, then I can tell you with certainty that I'm a human. Lenny laughed and shook his head. Seeing that the Dragon of Five Evils was still confused, he explained. The reason why I fell down here is because I was chased by a demonic cultivator called the West Mountain Elder. I had no choice but to escape here. This is the only place where he doesn't dare to chase me down. If it were any other place, I would have been killed 10,000 times. West Mountain Elder? Is this demonic cultivator very strong? The Dragon of Five Evils asked casually. Although it was completely incomparable to an Earth-opening stage being, in its opinion, Lin Yi's strength was not weak. Moreover, he had the help of the ghostly thing. An ordinary expert would not be able to chase him so embarrassedly. He's an evil cultivator at the mountain opening stage. To you, he's nothing, but to me, he's very troublesome. I've already escaped here for a few months, but that guy still hasn't given up. Until now, he's still sent people to monitor and guard the top. Once I go up, he'll know immediately, so I'm completely trapped here. Linny paused and looked at the dragon of 5 evils. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said, "By the way, if I go out and kill those 2 spies, the West Mountain Elder will definitely rush over. Can't you help me get rid of him? He's just an opening mountain elder. It should be a piece of cake for you, right? That's natural. If he dares to behave atrociously in front of me, I'll kill him in minutes," the dragon of 5 evils said arrogantly. This was not a boast. With its current strength at the Earth opening stage, it was absolutely a piece of cake to deal with the West Mountain Elder. "Well, I'll go up and kill those 2 bastards, Li Yinji and Guan Ziyuan. It just so happens that we have some old grudges. Once they're dead, the West Mountain Elder will come immediately. I'll leave it to you." Lin Yi immediately decided. He would not trouble others with his character, but this time, he really had no other choice. To be continued. Chapter 45-67. Generally speaking, no matter how strong and terrifying the opponent was, Lin Yi would wait until he was strong enough to kill him. However, West Mountain Elder was too much of a hindrance. He could not even return to the North Island. He could only watch helplessly as the deadline was about to pass. Now that he had unexpectedly found a strong helper like the Dragon of 5 Evils, it was not impossible for him to get rid of West Mountain Elder with its help. Wait a minute. Killing that nuisance West Mountain Old Sect Master is indeed not a problem for me, but the Dragon of 5 Evils hesitated for a moment with a troubled expression, then lowered its head in embarrassment and said weakly, "But I don't dare to go up there." "Huh? You don't dare to go up? Why?" Linny was stunned. "You don't know this. Ever since my master, the 5-poison flood dragon, escaped, the vermilion bird has been keeping an eye on this 5-poison swamp. They are afraid that my master will not die, so they specially set up a monitoring formation unique to the Spirit Beast clan. It is specifically aimed at my master. Once this monitoring formation detects the slightest aura of the dragon clan, the vermilion bird will immediately rush over and I will be in big trouble," the Dragon of 5 Evils said helplessly. Although it was a transcendent being at the Earth opening stage, there was still a big gap between it and the vermilion bird, a top elder of the Spirit Beast clan. Even its master, the 5-poison flood dragon, was no match for the vermilion bird. If they really fought, it would be killed in minutes. The vermilion bird set up a monitoring formation? Haha, we are really in the same boat. Lin Yi could only smile helplessly. He did not expect the vermilion bird to be as careful as West Mountain Elder. Lin Yi and the Dragon of 5 Evils were monitored by West Mountain Elder and the vermilion bird. They were really in the same boat. "According to my master, I have not shown up since I was teleported here, so the Spirit Beast clan still does not know of my existence. They only know that my master, the 5-poison flood dragon, is here. As such, before I become powerful enough to seek revenge on the vermilion bird, I definitely can't expose my aura. I can only hide here and cultivate in secret." The 5-Banes dragon looked at Lin Yi with an apologetic expression. It really did have the intention to help Lin Yi, but if the price was that the vermilion bird would notice or even kill it, then it would be too unwise. No matter how impulsive it wasn't that brainless. If that's the case, then forget it. Let the old monster of Shishan Old Sect live for a while longer. There's still a long way to go. I'll think of another way to get out of here. Linny nodded. If it was just a small favor, it didn't matter. However, if he ended up harming the dragons of 5 evils because of him, he would feel bad. By the way, why did that evil cultivator called West Mountain Old Sect Master want to kill you? Did you kill his father or his son? The Dragon of 5 Evils asked curiously. Not much different. I killed 2 of his disciples, and one of them seemed to be his nephew, so he chased me all over the world. I had been chased once before, but I got rid of him after I escaped to the interior of the South Island. This time, I planned to go back to the North Island, but I was found by him as soon as I got out of the dock. The Five Poison Swamp was the only place nearby, and he didn't dare to enter it. So Senior Ghost asked me to escape here and hide for a while. I didn't expect him to be so persistent. It's been 4 months, and he still asked someone to guard it. I can't get out of here. Lenny gave a simple explanation and shrugged helplessly. He had encountered such a persistent enemy like West Mountain Old Sect Master. He was really losing his temper. Alas, it's a pity that I can't protect myself now, and I can't help you. The Dragon of Five Evils sighed. It's okay. Who would have thought that we would be such brothers in hardship? I'll figure out a way to get out by myself. Lenny smiled and waved his hand. A living person couldn't be suffocated to death. As long as he was willing to put in the effort, he believed that he could find a way. Roar, although I can't directly help you kill West Mountain Old Sect Master, it's not impossible to get out if you just want to get out. The Dragon of Five Evils suddenly laughed and pretended to be mysterious. You probably don't know that the Five Poison Swamp is not the only exit in this space where we are now. Is there a second exit? Lenny was surprised and happy. It was not important to kill West Mountain Old Sect Master, but if there was a second exit that could get rid of West Mountain Old Sect Master's surveillance, everything would be easy. Yes, as far as I know, there is a second exit. The Dragon of Five Evils nodded affirmatively. Don't be fooled by the murderous aura of the 5 elements above. In fact, many places are not within the scope of the Five Poison Swamp. If you go up, you will find that it is blocked by the ground. So if you want to get in and out of here, you have to go through an exit. The Five Poison Swamp you came in is just one of them. There is another way to get in and out of here. Really? That's great. Please take me there and have a look. Lenny said hurriedly. Now there was not much time left before the deadline of the task, but as long as he could get out successfully, Lenny believed that he could get back to the North Island in time. After all, the spirit bird was a spirit beast of the nascent soul realm now, and its flying speed was much faster than when it came here. West Mountain Old Sect Master would definitely only guard the Five Poison Swamp. He probably didn't even know that there was such a mysterious and vast space below, let alone the second exit. Therefore, as long as he went through the second exit mentioned by the Dragon of Five Evils, he could definitely get rid of West Mountain Old Sect Master without being noticed. Well, it's not a problem to get rid of West Mountain Old Sect Master through the second exit, but the Dragon of Five Evils suddenly stopped talking. But what? Lenny asked hurriedly. But the second exit is not like the Five Poison Swamp here. Although it is also densely covered with the murderous aura of the 5 elements, you can definitely get out, but it depends on whether you have the courage to do so. The Dragon of Five Evils looked at Lin Yi and said, "What? Is there danger outside?" Lin Yi's heart suddenly tightened. He had finally found a way out, and he didn't want to be doused with cold water again. It's not that dangerous. However, just like the Swamp of 5 Poisons, there is a monitoring array formation that specifically targets my master. Although you don't have the aura of the Dragon Clan on you, and you won't trigger too much of a reaction from the array formation, you will still be discovered, the Dragon of Five Malice explained. Chapter 4568. My master is a great threat to them. Of course they don't take it seriously, or they will lose their positions. The Dragon of Five Evils curled its lips and said, "That's true. But although the exit you mentioned has a monitoring formation, it won't do anything to me. When I came in from the Five Poison Swamp, I didn't attract any spirit beasts." Lenny rubbed his chin and said thoughtfully, "It won't, but it's hard to say here." The Dragon of Five Evils shook its head. Why? Lenny was slightly surprised. Because it's the territory of the spirit beasts. It can be regarded as the hinterland of the South Island. The Dragon of Five Evils said. It had never gone to that exit. To be exact, it had never gone out since it was transmitted here. However, the Five Poisons Flood Dragon had told it many things before it died. Besides, it had accepted the strength of the Five Poisons Flood Dragon, which involved the inheritance of the primordial spirit and many memories of the five poisons flood dragon. Damn! The hinterland of the South Island? How dare I go there? Lin was speechless. The hinterland of the South Island was a forbidden area for human cultivators. Moreover, he had been noticed by the vermilion bird before. If he showed up in such a suspicious place, he would be courting death. The five poisons swamp might not have been guarded by spirit beasts because it was too remote, but it might not be the case here. This was the hinterland of the South Island of the spirit beasts. It was just a matter of convenience to send a few powerful spirit beasts to guard it. Vermilion Bird's behavior was almost the same as that of West Mountain Elder. Unless it saw the dead body, it wouldn't give up easily, no matter how long it had been. Right? You can't go back to the South Island now. You may have a chance to survive facing the evil cultivator of West Mountain Elder, but if you're noticed by the Vermilion Bird in the hinterland of the South Island, you won't even know how you die. The ghost didn't agree with Lin going to this exit. It knew the suspicious character of the Vermilion Bird. If Lin suddenly rushed out from this suspicious exit, he would definitely be caught and his divine sense would be extracted without any hesitation. If that happened, he would definitely be captured without hesitation and his divine sense would be extracted. There was no other possibility. Why? It's dangerous for a human cultivator to appear in the hinterland of the South Island. But with your strength and the protection of Senior Ghost, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to escape. The monitoring formation won't react much to you. As long as you don't get caught by the spirit beast when you go out, it shouldn't be a problem. You don't know this. Last time when I was chased by the West Mountain sect and fled to the South Island, I accidentally broke into the Spirit Beast conference held by Vermilion Bird and others, and I was suspected in public. I almost got away, and then I had to go to the toilet to escape. Then, I escaped. Spirit Beast. I. Originally, he was just an insignificant person. Normally, even if he was found to be a human cultivator, he could escape, and Vermilion Bird would not make a big fuss about it. However, he happened to hear Vermilion Bird's big plan. If he leaked it in advance, it would easily ruin his plan. Maybe the plan would be aborted halfway. If Linny was in Vermilion Bird's position, he would definitely not hesitate to put himself on the wanted list and kill him. I can't believe it. I really can't go out from that exit. Hearing this, the Dragon of Five Evils looked at Linny again in surprise. It didn't expect that Linny had an encounter with Vermilion Bird. It was really lucky that he could escape unscathed with his little strength. Alas, it seems that God wants me to stay here and cultivate for a while. Since I'm here, I'll take things as they come. Anyway, I can't escape from both ends. Let's cultivate together. We can keep each other company. Since there was no way out, Linny had to accept the reality calmly. That's the only way. The Dragon of Five Evils nodded. Originally, it was the only one in the vast space, which was boring and depressing. Now, it had an old friend like Lin as a companion, which was a good thing for it. By the way, how do you usually cultivate? Lin suddenly asked. He was very interested in the Dragon of Five Evils, which was a super spirit beast at the Earth opening stage. Moreover, the Dragon of Five Evils had 5 elements, just like him. Maybe there was something he could learn from it. Me? My cultivation is sleeping. Before I met you, I was still sleeping. I slept for more than a year. The Dragon of Five Evils' answer made Lin Yi's jaw drop. Sleeping is cultivation? Is there any justice in this world? Lin Yi subconsciously turned his head to look at the spirit bird beside him. He had never seen this fellow cultivate. It just hopped around and played around, and it broke through from the peak of the foundation establishment stage all the way to the original infant stage. As for the Dragon of Five Evils, it was simply sleeping. When it woke up, it could level up. If all the spirit beasts were like these two fellows, then they would definitely be favored by God. In contrast, Lin Yi, a human cultivator, could barely level up a few levels. Compared to these two fellows, he was simply too weak. Even Lin Yi was like this, let alone other human cultivators. They were all in tears. Actually, you don't have to be envious. Cultivating in dreams is an inherent talent of most spirit beasts of the dragon clan. After all, dragons are very fond of sleeping. If you expect them to only cultivate when they are awake, they will not be able to level up even if they die. In that case, the dragon clan would have been wiped out a long time ago. The ghost explained with a smile, "Don't forget that I have been recovering in a deep sleep. Moreover, the five evils has received a powerful inheritance from the five poison flood dragon. If it does not sleep for a long time, it will not be able to digest its strength." That's still very ridiculous. You can level up by just sleeping. If those human cultivators, who can't even level up by taking pills, heard this, they will spit out a mouthful of blood. Lenny was speechless. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.